They were scum. Trash. Refuse that didn't fit into the system.
Went mad, he did. The truth was, nobody knows anything.
Well, I'll tell you what I know. It's the dumbest fucking bet I ever heard of.
I disagree. I disagree, Gary.
He believed that there was some enchantment in the light.
I was one of 1,000 working stiffs. Until there wasn't no more.
Sometimes we do bad things for good reasons.
We'll bring you back after you get your car.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare, from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon,
Do it!
we decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover. Patreon subscribers also get an on-air shout-out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for almost 2 years. So there are almost, I believe it's 50 bonus episodes, or almost 50 bonus episodes waiting for you if you haven't made the jump yet. So if you haven't, definitely consider doing that. And speaking of which, we have a lot of people who made the jump this week. So forgive me, I'm going to rip through them pretty fast because this is already going to be a long episode without doing this.
Yeah,
So
got a lot of movies to talk about today.
thanks to Bradley V, Snevens, Simon Ostick, Paul Meredith, Impeach the Paw Patrol.
His legal name. Oh man,
I'm actually
That's
really
awesome.
I'm actually really scared now that I've just realized that people could make accounts and I have to say it on the air. So if you ever want a hilarious ringtone, just make it your username on Patreon, I guess. Riley Almond, Jake Hartsgrove, Nru, Trace Sover. Trace is actually a longtime friend of the show.
Sweet.
I went on his podcast and talked about the Child's Play movies not that long ago. So thanks,
nice.
Chase, for finally making the jump here at the end of the year.
Yes, thank you.
We've also got Joe, just Joe. We've got R.C. Barnes, Connor Morgan, and that's it. Oh, and Andrew Gaines, who just signed up today.
Oh, sweet. Thank you very much, guys. That's awesome.
Thanks to all of you guys who signed up on the Patreon there. It really helps us out. We appreciate all of the support and hope you guys are enjoying all those bonus episodes. The other plug for the week, as always, is iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever. If you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts, and I know, I see the stats. I know you're out there. I can frickin' see you.
Make those reviews.
Go scroll down to the bottom of the podcast and give us a good old 5-star rating and maybe even a review.
That would be awesome.
Helps us find new listeners if you guys do that. So we really appreciate you guys doing that as well. But those are your plugs for the week. Welcome back. This is the first episode of the new year. As always, I am Josh, and that is...
I'm Jamie. Welcome back.
Yes. This is the official 2-year anniversary of Sleazoids.
That's crazy.
This was when the same time in 2018 that we recorded our first episode on Spider Baby and the Hills Have Eyes, sitting at the table using a single mic.
Yep.
And we were...
Just amateurs.
Yeah, and I think that episode was under an hour.
Was it? Yeah. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah, since then, the show has almost doubled in length.
Every week.
But as we've kind of made tradition on the show, or I guess we are solidifying as tradition by doing it for the second year in a row, the first episode of a new year is going to be our favorite movies of the previous year. We're going to put 2019 to bed. I know everyone has, you've probably already done that in your life. You're already looking forward to 2020.
It's understandable.
You're already hyping up like Denis Villeneuve's like Dune, which is still like 11 months away, but you're already thinking about it.
Probably my most anticipated, I think.
But before we get on, and Jamie and I decided we were going to put 2019 officially to bed, and we are going to count down, each of us, our top 10 films specifically genre films, films that, you know, are spiritual successors to the kind of films that we like to talk about on the show. Action films, sci-fi films, horror, a few martial arts films. I don't know. I got a couple on my list. I don't know what Jamie's got, but last year, for example, we exchanged lists and we kind of coordinated it. But this year, we've kept it a bit of a secret. So we're going to have some on-air surprises, hopefully, this year.
Definitely.
But there were also a lot of really great genre films that came out this year. While compiling my list,
tough.
I had to kill some darlings this year off the list.
I was not happy in a certain way.
That there were a couple that, you know, so we had a lot to choose from, and I'm assuming it was similar for you guys. But this is always a great episode to listen to because, you know, obviously we're going to talk about some new films that, you know, you guys, the free listeners in particular, haven't heard about. The Patreon listeners get the bonus transmissions throughout the year. So a couple of the films we're going to talk about today, they got like full half-hour discussions on and stuff like that, but a couple of them are going to be new to them too. So either way, get your pens and papers out. I guess that's kind of old school. Maybe just
go to Letterboxd.
Yeah, pull out your notes app.
Yeah.
And we are going to talk about some films that hopefully you guys have seen. Some of them are pretty big, but also Jamie and I like to, you know, sometimes disqualify some of the bigger films so we can get some smaller films on this list. I remember last year we disqualified Aquaman because we both had a great time with that film, but we were like, does anyone really need to hear more about the new DC film? It's like, probably not. So we try to get smaller, more sort of underrated films onto our list when we do this. And but speaking of which, I think we are going to jump into, so we're going to talk obviously about top 10 films. We're going to go back and forth. I'm going to do my 10, his 10, my 9, Jamie's 9. But before that, Jamie and I are going to both list we're going to try to do this briefly. Yeah. We didn't do it briefly last year, but we're going to try.
We're fucking horrible at that.
Yeah, but the honorable mentions I feel like are even stronger this year, so it's going to be even harder. Yeah, so we're going to do honorable mentions, things that Jamie and I both regretfully maybe couldn't fit on the list that were like just narrowly missed it, just so that you guys don't yell at us.
Like last year, it was a bunch of like 3-star movies, so it was a little easier.
This year I had
so many that were almost even. Yeah, it was brutal.
Exactly. So I'm going to go first, and we're going to jump into some honorable mentions here. I'm going to start with kind of the ones on the lower end of my honorable mentions, because there's a couple like kind of like underrated threes I kind of wanted to bring up, but I'm sure there's a couple threes I'm going to miss. I'm going to be reminded on when Jamie brings them up on his list too. So, but one I wanted to bring up, The Golden Glove.
Oh, hell.
An absolutely repulsive,
disgusting
German serial killer film, much in the vein of like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and like angst, and it's very much like those old school 80s serial killer films from the point of view of a serial killer.
Yeah, there's no real fun to be had with this movie. In like a, you know, I mean, it's a well done film. It's entertaining, but you're not going to get any type of satisfaction out of it.
No, directed by German filmmaker Fatih Akin. It's probably one of the straight up grossest films that I saw last year, which is kind of what brought it on to my list, because he does like an 80s serial killer film, but he does it in kind of like this 70s German art house style, like the period detail of the specific time of the 70s, and also it's very in the realm of like Fassbinder and stuff like that, like German art house filmmakers, like that kind of sort of period distance to it.
Just the decay throughout the film, like watch it. I remember
the way that he stacks the corpses in his house, and you can smell them.
And then apparently, in order to get rid of the smell, he puts just a bunch of like car odor things in the kitchen, so they're just
like in Seven, when they go in and they find the guy who's been rotting.
Oh my god, it's so gross.
Yeah, and I just really appreciated that it didn't really try to like psychoanalyze or moralize much about the character. It just looks at this national rot, like this idea of kind of like a Germany that has kind of maybe paved over certain atrocities that they have committed and has, you know, tried to forget about them, and instead you get a bunch of poor people sitting in a bar trying to drink away all of their feelings.
Yeah.
And one of those people might be a serial killer who is trying to sort of like kill local sex workers and that. But I just like that it's in tune with Germany's history of abuse and war and poverty and stuff like that as well. So like it has things on its mind while also being just one of the grossest movies that I saw last year. And I watched it because John Waters put it on his top 10.
Top 10.
It was in his top 10 movies of the year. And the way and
I couldn't even like get like I threed it because I couldn't get past some of this shit. But John Waters, man, what a crazy motherfucker.
Yeah, the way he said it was shame on you for making it, shame on me for putting it on this list, and shame on you if you like it.
Yeah, love it. That's the perfect way to put it.
So that was on my list. Also, there was this really cool underrated slasher that was like a Shudder exclusive, I think, called Haunt.
Oh,
which
yeah.
had an awesome face peel in it.
Yeah, it ended up being really, really good. I at first it felt a little corny, like the dialogue's pretty bad, and it's a little, it's cliched. You know, there's a lot of just character tropes that you've seen before.
And I would say there's not as much sort of like thematic depth,
No,
even
not
being
at all.
attempted as like with
but
something
just
like
the
Golden
ride,
Glove.
like it does truly feel like you're, going through this haunted carnival ride kind of thing. So that part of it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really like the idea of it taking place in a haunted house and like the artificial construction of the building and the lighting and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It makes a really good excuse for them to do like these really stylized kills.
Exactly.
And yeah, so like that one was really awesome, and it did have some really awesome gore effects in that as well. But also on my list, one of the last 3-star ones, I had the always, we got to put one direct-to-video actioner on our list every time. Avengement. Scott
hell yeah.
Adkins.
Hell yeah, that was
One
on
of the
mine too.
sickest.
I almost floored it. I might on rewatch, honestly.
Yeah, no, it's really solid. I watched it a little earlier in the year, and I didn't get a chance to rewatch it, or I might have even upgraded it. It might have stood a chance of making the list because Scott Adkins is really, really good in it. And the one knock I have against it is that I wish there was a little bit more. Like Scott Adkins is an incredible martial artist and athlete.
Yeah,
and
he's fantastic.
there's not a lot of fight scenes in this one in particular that like really like they're great fight scenes, but
Yeah.
there's none of him doing like the crazy drop kicks and stuff that he does
Yeah,
sometimes.
a
in
lot
other
of
films.
it's very just power driven, like just these big swinging arms, and I think there's
yeah.
even there's a couple like wrestling moves too where they're like backdropping people and stuff, and I always love seeing that.
Yeah, well, because the fights are just brutal and vicious,
Yeah.
and they're it's closer to like a direct-to-video version of like Chopper or
Yeah,
like Bronson
for sure.
with like Tom Hardy, and
100%.
like it's much closer to something like that. And even though it's direct-to-video, it's still like it's got a grit and a texture to it. And you just watch Scott Adkins just go full bloody brawls in like a prison, in
Yeah.
a bar,
And then-
in a hospital, in an elevator, in a
And at one point,
nightclub.
he's got the fake teeth or whatever, and they're like silver teeth. Oh man, there's such grit to his character.
Yeah, and it ends on a 10v1 hand-to-hand combat
Yeah.
in a bar. That's just incredible to watch.
It is amazing,
So-
and it's really well choreographed. Like a lot of the time, it's hard to see the 10 versus 1 as a realistic thing, and it's still not. But the way that they shoot it, they do a really good job of choreographing and setting the camera in the proper spots to make it look
Yeah, Jesse
believable.
V. Johnson is the filmmaker, and he's been working with Scott Adkins for I think 4 or 5 films now, and I think this is the best one that I've seen them do, which is why I was closest to like 4ing this one.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
earlier in the year they also did that Triple Threat, which I think we both watched.
Oh
which had
yeah,
the
that's
raid.
actually I think.
Was that on your list?
That, yeah, I'm
and
pretty
that was
sure.
it was also him. He directed both of those.
Triple Threat's on my honorary mentions for sure.
Sweet. I also have Serenity,
Oh hell yeah!
which we did a full bonus transmission on, talking about. That movie broke Jamie and I's mind. I'm going to
Yeah.
skip over it because I have a feeling Jamie.
It's in a weird spot that I'll
Okay.
get to when we start naming it off. Yeah.
But yes, if you ever want to see something that has Matthew McConaughey drunkenly yelling about tunas and rum and the Iraq War, while also I guess
And he's giving it.
living in a video game where
Yeah.
his son is imagining him wanting to fuck his own mom, and
Yeah, it's-
if any of that sounds interesting to you, Serenity was a good watch. Dragged
deep
Across
psychological
Concrete.
thriller.
Dragged Across Concrete, S. Craig Zoller. We also did a bonus transmission on that. I'm going to start going a little faster here because I'm going to take forever.
That one we might see anyway.
That one we might see anyway. Chinese filmmaker, I'm going to butcher this, Jia Zhangke, I believe is his name. He had a bit of a gangster film this year called Ashes Purest White, which I thought was really awesome. Knife Plus Heart.
Oh hell yeah!
Was a really good one, which had sort of like an Italian Euro horror vibe to it. A little bit of giallo. It had a little bit of cruising in it.
Yeah.
It involved a serial killer of gay men who used a dildo that had a knife that comes out of it at the end.
Yeah.
And there was one
there's
death
an
where a guy is
explicit-
blowing the dildo, and then he has the knife go through the back of his head, and it's really disgusting.
Yeah, it's nuts, and it's also explicit in the sense that it essentially just shows like fellatio, like full on fellatio.
Yeah.
And it's pretty aggressive too. And
Yeah,
then
it's about
leads
porn
into a kill.
producers.
It's just oh
Yeah.
my god.
So it's people who work in the porn industry being picked off one by one, and like the police
Yeah.
not really caring because they're a bunch of porn actors, and some of them are homeless and live on the street and stuff like that.
Yeah.
John Wick 3. I don't even think I need to explain that one. Action's incredible. I kind of wish they wrapped up the franchise, which is maybe why this isn't quite as high. I was sitting there going, this does feel like they're spinning wheels a little bit more at this point, but when the action's that good, do you really care that they're still spinning wheels?
Yeah.
It's not quite 2, which if we would have been doing this when 2 came out, it would have been like in my top 2 films.
Yeah.
Like I loved 2 so much.
There's I'm gonna save it because once again I think it is on the thing.
It's on. Okay, it's gonna come up a little bit later. Okay,
but I do agree with you in a sense. Like once it stopped, I was kind of like, oh, they're gonna keep going. Okay, I love these things, so I'm fine with it. But I do feel you. But I'll elaborate a little more later.
Sounds good. I also have In Fabric. Peter Strickland, who did Duke of Burgundy. He did a killer dress horror movie that's also a comedy. It's a bit of a workplace comedy like Office Space that also meets Italian Euro horror, and it basically locates the subterranean horror of like a department store in the 70s and stuff like that.
I love how like it shows certain scenes show like the power of the dress, like one when it just starts to destroy the washing machine, and that shot of just that stationary camera and the fucking thing bouncing everywhere, like it almost looks like it's murdering the washing machine. It's hilarious.
Yeah, so that was good. I also put The Lighthouse in the honorable mentions here. We did a full bonus transmission pretty recently on that for any patrons, so you can get a full discussion on that one. I imagine it's going to be coming up on Jamie's list a little bit higher.
Oh, you best believe it is.
So we'll save that discussion for a little bit later. I put Jordan Peele's Us in the honorable mentions here because that was pretty solid. Earlier on in the year, I actually thought it would make the list, but this was such a good year.
That's the thing. Like, it's a solid 4. There are other ones that I felt just were more impactful.
Yeah, and I'm just going to rip through these last ones. So I got Gemini Man, Ang Lee.
Yep. Nice.
Alita, Battle Angel.
Hell yeah.
Both of those are very sort of like digital
wait
effects
for the
heavy
Alita
action
sequel.
films. Yes,
really
hopefully
excited.
There is
For once,
sequel.
I'm like, yeah, bring me a sequel.
And it broke my heart to put these in the honorable mentions, but Midsummer.
Oh, yeah.
Which
see that a little more.
Which Ari Aster. We did a full bonus transmission as well, and I did a full review on it. But Midsummer, I found really, really disgusting and really awesome to watch, and really perverse in how it gets you into the headspace of a character.
We had that great theater experience
where we
a couple basically breaking up in front of us because of how awesome Ari Aster is.
Yes. So that was a lot of fun, and I'm also throwing Ad Astra on here, James Gray, which just barely didn't get into the list.
Yeah, it was very close for me.
Very moving Odyssey-esque sci-fi film that has a little bit of Heart of Darkness, has a little bit of Blade Runner, has a little bit of 2001. Describing it now, I'm like, why didn't you put that on your list, idiot? But really, really good film. Brad Pitt gets a really good performance. Yeah, and we did a bonus transmission on that one where we really talked about how Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones get at the emotion of sort of like these closed off people looking for simple answers to problems, and then realizing almost in a hopeful way that we can't rely on easy answers. You have to put in the real difficult work to actually make your lives and maybe the lives of everyone else around you a little bit better.
Also, I just appreciated how simplistic the overall statement kind of was for that film, but the way that they show it is just great. Like it's
and again, the way that it never leaves Brad Pitt's perspective as he leaves Earth to the moon and goes all the way to Neptune.
we get to see moon pirates.
Moon pirates, fucking
some good
space
stuff.
Baboons.
It's crazy.
Good stuff. All right, that's my honorable mentions. Jamie, your honorable mentions.
Sweet. So yeah, Alita was one. So we already covered that. Lose. Is it Luz or Lose? Lose. That was fantastic.
Yep.
That, and to be it was a film
thesis film.
That's unbelievable. As I was watching it,
we did a bonus transmission on that earlier in the year. For anyone who hasn't seen it, that is I think that's a German one too.
I think
right?
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
German film student just made like an 80s possession film.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what this guy does once he gets the feature length.
We might approach that a little bit later on my list, so we'll see how it goes.
Beautiful. Under the Silver Lake. So yeah, the first time I watched it, I still enjoyed it, but it didn't hit me all that hard. That the second time, just this story of this like lonely stoner, just going about like he basically his boredom has gotten to a point where he just needs any type of adventure, so he just starts to unravel this conspiracy theory, and the fact that it's also based around a music group and the music industry in general, to reveal a very, very scary
sort of conspiracy
theory, where it's just like this old man has essentially written every single hit, including the ones that were the rebellious, teenage angst hits, the ones that we hold dear to our heart. Yeah,
the punk
Nirvana,
movement,
all of it, so it's just that thought itself was horrifying.
That you
but
were
then,
being commodified and sold by rich people, like
but then just
your
also
own anti-rich
watching,
sentiments, maybe.
Yeah, and then also watching the character just kind of. He is such a loser, but I could endlessly watch him go throughout the city and just discover these little stories, like these characters, and it was, the second time it really hit me a lot harder than the first.
Sweet.
Was that also on your honorary mentions, or are we? Okay.
It.
Shadow. Shadow was fantastic. I wanted to give it bring it higher in the list. It's just the thing is I only got to see it once, and it's the story itself didn't hit me all that hard, just because it's very dry. It's very political, and so. It was hard for me to feel like I had a lot of passion for it compared to some of the other ones that I had on the list. But the action itself is unbelievable. It's so gritty. Like the way that they use environments. Like we were talking, I think on our review.
Zhang Yimou's like Chinese filmmaker.
We were talking in our review that one scene where it's like he sticks out those pieces of wood and then just
on the
kicks the guy,
fighting.
Slides him into it. Just that attention to detail. And then we have like guys going down a street and metal Beyblades basically shooting arrows at all sides. It's unbelievable.
The
6
action
Underground.
I'm
throwing it in there. It in there because it's just I wanted to throw it in there because it's one of the first Michael Bay movies that I've seen where I wasn't like pissed watching him do all this stupid superficial stuff.
Yeah.
Like watching him do a revolt in a I think it was like a third world country, and they're wearing Sprite on their shirts, and
he films it like a fucking Pepsi ad.
Exactly, that's exactly what I said. It felt like a Super Bowl commercial where you're supposed to feel really good about it, but it's about like
rated
the
R
human struggle and like so it's just. But for some reason, because he went
features
so
like people's
full
heads
throttle,
exploding, and
right?
Like,
he has no respect for the human body in this movie, and because of that, because he just went for it, I had respect this time around. I almost wanted to for it because it was just so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember telling you that was me, where I was going, objectively, there's problems. Like I was sitting there going, but I was going, I want to give it the 4 though. So we ended up, I think, both going with the 3. But that's just like one of the.
I almost felt like I couldn't give it the 4. Like I wanted to, but out of principle, I just couldn't.
Matt Lynch gave it the 4.5 on Letterboxd, so I feel like
we go.
He's doing it for us.
Yeah, he's fighting the good fight.
But as far as like vulgar, plastic, just complete grossness with blood squibs and dubstep remixes, it's just like it's
and
like,
Eminem jokes.
And like troop porn and like all the practical explosions you could possibly fit in, and like literal gore gags and like
innocents just die, but he never holds on it. You know what I mean? Like you'll watch an innocent car just blow up. You just watched somebody die, but he never focuses on it, so it doesn't allow your brain to really process it, and so you just keep having fun. And you feel bad about it, but I'm here. I'm having a good time.
It definitely joins the ranks of like the closest Michael Bay has ever gotten to like bad taste masterpiece type shit.
Exactly.
Which by the way, look for it coming up in the next month. We are going to be doing a Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2 episode. So
very excited.
Stay tuned.
Hell yeah. Depraved. This one was like basically a modern take on Frankenstein. It was really good. I just thought it was a little long, and overall,
it's 2 hours. It's a bit long.
I thought it was too long, and overall, it to me didn't make many new points about the Frankenstein story. It was just really well done.
Connecting it to the wartime stuff, like Manchurian Candidate stuff, I thought was sort of interesting.
I agree.
This idea of like repurposing like the body parts of like fallen soldiers and stuff to create a Frankenstein was sort of interesting. But like,
for sure,
that's kind of its main new thing that it tries to do, and like it's kind of like Silicon Valley, like tech bros who like invent Frankenstein instead of like a mad scientist.
It was a little broy.
Yeah,
it was more broy than
because they take him out to like the nightclubs and stuff, and they're like, Frankenstein, we're gonna get you a girl.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, it's definitely worth a watch though. Bliss, I almost forward actually. It's just, I I don't really know what was holding me back too much. It's very aggressive, like to a point of it being obnoxious, and I think that's the whole point of it, because it's
really
going in
love
this
the
very
ending.
underground punky art scene. So like the characters are constantly swearing. Like it's I think every other word is fuck in this movie. And they're also the girl has a big substance problem, so she's always kind of teetering on the edge of her sanity, both when the ghosts appear, it seems, and then also just herself. Like she's obviously been going through a lot of substance abuse throughout, and it seems like she relies on that substance to make art. Which leads to her ultimate destruction, essentially.
Yeah, I remember I described it as something along the lines of like if Gaspar Noé tried to do like the Driller Killer or the Addiction, because
100%.
it's definitely got that Driller Killer going out into the night, and like you're feeling like you have like writer's block, but like for an artist, like that kind of thing, and going out and like finding catharsis in like creating art out of murder. That's what the Driller Killer was a lot like for Abel Ferrara, and then the Addiction was him doing Abel Ferrara, the same filmmaker as Driller Killer, doing a vampire film.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
That's definitely what like the filmmaker here is going for, and I do think that like the Driller Killer and the Addiction are just such good films that someone trying to recreate them I think is just going to be pretty good. My only thing was that Abel Ferrara is just, those films are so good that watching someone else try and do them, I was kind of like, I respect the attempt, but you're not quite there. Even if some of the imagery is like the 16mm photography is very well done, and the final half hour is really abstract and gory.
Very crazy, and I love the way that they use the painting, like as the deaths are
she's
coming
accumulating
up,
bodies.
and the painting gets more and more
something.
detailed, and then the end is essentially showing that it's like she got to create her masterpiece, but this is the cost. And
it reminded me a little bit of House that Jack built, like when he's building his house
100%.
and it's accumulating bodies and stuff, but instead it's her painting.
For sure. So that was great.
That would be on my honorable mentions as well.
Avengement, which we discussed. Haunt, which we discussed. Gemini Man. And Three from Hell. Three from Hell was
Rob
actually,
Zombie.
This was like it's odd
Rob
because
Zombie's
the first
spaghetti
two,
western hangout film.
Yeah, the first two seem like they were a lot more structured, whereas this one he definitely made a hangout film. It was like let's just throw these three characters that you know and love, and just kind of allow them to be completely unhinged. Like there's almost no plot really. Essentially, they're just on the run. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And one of the best uses of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida in a film since Manhunter.
Hell yeah, absolutely. And I just he's just super gritty. Like this time around, he has no filter at all. Not that Rob Zombie usually does, but there's the first two, just like I said, seem more structured, and this one is a completely just loose cannon.
Yeah, my only
film.
thing about it not getting a little bit higher was that it didn't quite have that transcendent ending of The Devil's Rejects.
I agree.
Because when they do that Freebird song, and they have them driving into oblivion, meeting their own deaths.
Yeah.
Like Bonnie and Clyde shit. Like it's Rob Zombie doing like old school American Bonnie and Clyde kind of stuff. And I was sitting there and I was like, that just blew me away.
That's what
and
I
there's
was
nothing
hoping for.
quite in Three from Hell that achieves that kind of high.
You see glimpses,
but it was fun watching these characters again and having him. He still found something new to do with them, with having the more hangout vibe and having them go down to Mexico and
I do like that he still was able to use Sid because he passed away before I think they could finish the whole thing. I think he was going to play a bigger part than he does, but
he was also sick too. So I think that was part of it too.
So, but
he
just the
didn't have
fact
the
that he
energy.
still got his scenes and stayed true to the character was nice to see. And then we also have Rambo: Last Blood. I'm putting it on.
There we go.
Putting it on. I just loved the grit. I love.
It does have one of my favorite movie moments of the year.
Was that the ending?
I didn't care. Yes.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Just I'll rip your heart out. It's just fantastic.
Just Sylvester Stallone ripping the beating heart out of a guy that he has pinned up on his barn.
Yeah.
And being like,
this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's just, that's good. That's good stuff. I do wish that Rambo died, like not in a morbid way, just the kind of like a sacrifice to show what he's been going through this whole time and how he could never escape it. It seems like at the end they kind of just were like, he's okay though, and I'm like, well, I don't think he should be. Like at this point, it should be game over. Like watching him destroy his farmhouse and all that was kind of his one salvation.
Yeah.
I think should have been the end.
Well,
of
and
his
also the way
character.
that he's done them, like tunnels, like back in Vietnam and
Right,
stuff like that. Like, there's
exactly.
some cool stuff in there. It really sucked for me that the best stuff was in the last almost 10 to 15 minutes
yeah.
of the movie.
I feel you.
And a lot of the rest of the film was like a Millennium direct-to-video action film, which is not a big problem. I like Millennium direct-to-video action films. It sucks that it's the character of Rambo, because the
Yeah, 'cause
style.
we're used to-
I was
yeah.
honestly, if it was the same story, but like they had stylistically gone in like the bombastic stuff that they did in like First Blood Part 2 or something, like it
For
would
sure.
have been like higher on my list.
For sure,
But just very unfortunate seeing that Sylvester Stallone has to do like direct to video stuff now. It's just kind of like maybe he should be getting a little bit bigger budgets.
I think so. Hell yeah. I mean, we saw like Creed, the first one anyway. I haven't seen the second, but the first Creed was unbelievable.
Excellent, yeah.
The Fanatic, wanted to just throw it out
yeah.
there because it's so insane. It's not. I'm still struggling whether or not. I mean, it's not a good movie, but when I like something, ironically, it can turn into an actual like sincere enjoyment. So I'm still struggling with it.
It's not the worstly made movie I've ever seen.
No, it's pretty well shot. I mean, you get to watch John Travolta just be completely insane, and he goes for it. So I gotta respect that a little bit.
Yeah, it's not the most sensitive portrayal of a guy with autism you've
No,
ever seen.
not at all.
And also written and directed by the frontman for Limp Bizkit,
Yes,
Fred Durst.
I definitely should mention that. It's directed by Fred Durst. So by the way,
And at one point, a character goes, "You like a little biscuit?" And then he puts on a Limp Bizkit song with the
is
kid,
nice.
and he's like, "Yeah,
This is
yeah,
nice."
That's nice, yeah."
Oh my god, it's just like how more obvious can you get? I just love.
And then it
love
has a
how Fred
finale
Durst-
that's like S. Craig Zoller shit, where like
Yeah.
he fucking like shoots off like
and
John
it's out of
Travolta's hand
nowhere,
and shit.
too.
Yeah,
like it really does take a left turn with his character, specifically Hunter, I think is his name. Okay, and then Crawl, which was that alligator
Yes.
film, just great. It was just a solid, cool action movie with some decent.
we always need a good survival film once a year.
with some decent character stuff with the father and the daughter. Triple threat I mentioned, Godzilla, the new Godzilla I wanted to mention,
Mm-hmm.
and then Glass, which I didn't get to rewatch. And you did rewatch it, right? And
Yes.
you upped it on the rewatch.
Yes.
So I do want to say that it might even be higher than I have it here. It's just I didn't get to rewatch it, so it might get up there.
Yeah, Jamie and I are defending the M. Night Shyamalan vulgar tourism angle here, I guess, because
Hell yeah.
people weren't a huge fan of Glass, I don't think, when it came out
Yeah,
this
it
year.
seemed really mixed. It seemed like most people three'd it, but I was like, mine was between the 3 and the 4.
Yeah, when
I
we
was
got
not
out, we
even
both
close.
liked it, but I kind of needed to think about it a bit more.
Yeah.
And rewatching it and reading some people on it, I was like, that's a much more interesting film than I, the first time I experienced it. So I
Yeah,
got to
for
rewatch
sure.
it actually twice.
I think for me, it was like I had kind of things that I had in mind that it was going to be.
Yeah,
and
and it wasn't,
So,
yeah.
and it wasn't that at all. He really did a subversion.
His own
so,
thing, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was surprised. I just think because it wasn't what I expected, my stupid brain wasn't as satisfied, or whatever the case was.
That
so I'm going to
happens
give
a
it
lot.
another go.
Exactly. Sometimes you need the second watch.
But I think it's definitely worth mentioning because it's awesome.
All right. Well, I think that will wrap it up for the honorable mentions, and I think we're gonna
the
start.
big boys.
We're gonna start kicking it off here with the top 10. Now, before I jump into mine, real quick, just going to mention that one film that would be on this list that I kind of disqualified because I couldn't quite justify what the genre would be.
Okay.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Probably
okay.
would have been in the top 10, but I had no idea how
That's
to argue.
I put it in my list, so I'm just gonna say that it is.
Okay.
and not try to put an argument up for it. And I'll
All
just
right.
say how I liked
well,
it.
I was just doing it for that, and I'll get to talk about it because I'm going to talk about it on Jamie's list. I was just saying that for my list, I disqualified it the same way I disqualified First Reformed last year, just
Yeah.
because I just didn't like that would have been my number 1 of last year.
Yeah.
And then I just couldn't quite figure out like what kind of box I could put it in. But it's
I
always a
think the
hard
reason
thing to
I
do.
did it, like, and I'll explain why I liked it. But I think the reason I did it was just because it was
There's so much
based
genre
around
movie
films
references and
of
stuff.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's what it was. It was kind of like being on the set of those films that we've been discussing. I guess that's pretty much where my brain was
Right.
at.
Totally fair. And the
Yeah.
only other one that I'm disqualifying from my top 10 because it's just not a genre film was An Elephant Sitting Still, the 4-hour Chinese
I still gotta watch
film,
that.
which is just phenomenal, made
Yeah.
by Hu Bo, who tragically committed suicide before
That was his
finishing
only
the film.
film, right?
Yeah, first and last film, 4 hours,
Crazy.
and it's an amazing drama. And it's the only film actually that was on my top 10 that wasn't a genre film. The rest are all genre films.
Yeah,
So
it's nuts. So this was almost easy for you to make eventually.
yep, I just had to
The
disqualify.
swap too. Well, since we're doing this, I'm actually just gonna, because I made my 10, but I had to mention one, so I made 11 technically.
Oh, okay, no, this is beautiful.
Okay.
Because I was just about to say I did that too.
Oh yeah.
So
We
if
did
I
not even discuss this.
yeah, so I don't know if you're gonna do it the same way I did it, but the way that I justified doing it was that I just have 2 films in the number 10 slot.
I can do that too.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
I have 2 films in the 10 slot, and the reason actually is because they were basically they were the next films that took the spot.
Yeah.
And I really could not decide which one I wanted in the slot. And
Yeah.
I felt every time I put one in and took the other one off, I was like, that doesn't feel right. And then I'd replace them and I was like, that doesn't feel right. So I eventually just decided, you know what, the number 10 spot is going to go to 2 films. And actually, I think these films have things in common and work as a double feature, which makes it even better. And my 2 films were Under the Silver Lake as number 10,
Hell yeah.
as well
It
as
was
the
so
film
close for me too.
Relaxer.
Oh, nice.
So I have them both.
I gotta
at the-
rewatch that one.
I have both in the number 10 slot. But Under the Silver Lake, obviously written and directed, it's the sophomore film by David Robert Mitchell, who did the film It Follows. And since he did It Follows, it's very clear he moved to LA. And as is the rule when you move to LA, your next film after moving there is about how much LA sucks.
Yeah, you gotta critique it.
So he did this awesome film where he took like the visual history of noir and conspiratorial paranoia in old Hollywood. He has all these old posters of like Hitchcock films up in his room and like
Yeah.
these old Hollywood monster films. He takes that and he puts it into his own kind of like polished thriller or horror movie. I mean, there's some really gross gore in this, like the dog being pulled apart, and when he eventually smashes that dude's face in with a guitar,
Yeah.
which we found out afterward was by the effects guy who did like Dead Heat and all that
Right,
stuff like
yeah.
that too, right?
Yeah.
So either way,
It's very well
it has
done.
Andrew Garfield basically playing like sort of like the Vertigo or the Rear Window main
Right.
Hitchcock guy, but he's like a young millennial stoner kind of like blowhard. Like
Yeah.
he's very horny. He's walking around LA looking at all the gorgeous women doing auditions.
And it does feel very loose.
Yes.
Like the story, that's why it didn't work for me almost the first time, was because I wasn't sure exactly what it was trying to do. I was trying to figure it out the whole time. You know? I was like, what is this saying?
And I love Andrew Garfield's performance as like he's the way that he walks around. He has like this like physical comedy energy to him, where he's
Sure.
kind of like lurching around and like sometimes he's almost like falling over.
yeah, he's just completely
He's got his
limp.
skinny jeans on,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
he's so and for me, it gave me vibes of like Body Double. Of the
Okay,
way
yeah.
that like De Palma kind of like did a little bit of like this really horny, grotesque like Hitchcock riff. This kind of has
Yeah.
like a similar vibe going for it, where it takes on like the enigmatic nature of a guy who, life around him is kind of sucks. He's about to get kicked out of his apartment. He doesn't have a job. And instead of, he's being told every day you're going to get kicked out of your apartment.
Yeah.
And instead he decides to investigate this murder mystery. That's his thing that he's going to do, which is the same idea as Rear Window, where the guy is stuck in his apartment. He's just like, well, hopefully someone tries to kill someone and I can get a really cool story out of it nearby looking out my window. Like, it's like he really
Yeah.
just wants something more to happen. And
Yeah,
I really
love it's Topher Grace's line where I think they're like playing video games, and it's kind of
Yeah.
saying it's like we do this because we don't have adventures to go on anymore. There's nothing left to discover.
Yes.
Like you can't be the explorer anymore because it's like the whole world has been seen and figured out in a sense.
Yeah.
So it seems like the movie is just like him just endlessly trying to figure out his next steps in life, but he's doing it with just such a nonchalant attitude, just totally carefree.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I just really love that the movie, which is, a pretty, like, inscrutable, like, layered with, like, these absurd kind of, like, moments as he's walking around trying to solve this conspiracy. And he basically thinks that there's, like, this thing where rich people are, like, harboring nukes underground and there's a war coming.
Yeah.
And, like, there's secret messages being passed through in the music and stuff like that. And it really, the movie engages, the inherent desire that a lot of people have to, like, solve puzzles.
I also like that at the end it's essentially just like crazy rich people.
Well, yeah,
Like,
that's
like,
just it.
He's like, what does this all mean? It's just like they're just insane.
He's looking for answers for things in the world that don't make sense to him, like this girl who he had a connection with who just disappears, and he's going and finding her, and he's like, there's these weird connections between like this rich millionaire who has disappeared, this girl that I like who I met once and just like fantasized about, and she's disappeared, and then like these local bands, and like there's something in the local arts industry, and there's something weird happening here, and he builds up this huge story in his head that there's something so deep and meaningful, and there's a maze that goes back to the 1930s and
I also love its
old
take
Hollywood
on
and
the industry, the music industry, where they have that lead singer that's like super good looking, he's the ladies' man, whatever, and then it reveals that all his hit songs were brought to him by the record label and said, this is now your hit song, this is what you do.
He's like, those are all the singles.
He's like, yeah, all mine are the ones that are the B-sides, the ones that nobody listens to. And I love that thought that it's kind of like the man pushing the agenda through these artists and all that. So that was great too.
Yeah, so I really loved that, and I think that ultimately he is forced to just reckon with the much more boring reality, which is just that a lot of your life is controlled by rich people who a lot of the time are pretty stupid, and there is no larger conspiracy. It is just that's the way that's the way the industry works. That's the way that money works. That's the way. So like the actual conspiracy just ends up being that like the rich people are burying themselves underground like pharaohs.
With 3 wives.
with 3 wives, and the girl that he's after is one of the wives. And I love that scene where he calls her down below where she's in the bunker and she's not allowed to escape now. She's basically buried herself for the rest of her life down there with the millionaire. And she goes, "Why were you looking for me? Like, do I know you?"
We had one night together.
I had one night where I watched a movie with you and talked on my bed for a little bit. And he's projected like this whole, fantasy relationship that they had. And again, the way that it just captures his like the confusion and ennui and the rage and the violence of like just feeling like you're living you don't have control over your life and that kind of stuff, and then trying to invent this crazy reality where you do have more control and you can solve the problems, and then you're realizing that no, just the way the world is organized as is already kind of crazy as it is. And we're just accustomed to it, we're used to it, we imagine it has to be something more evil and worse. In fact, it's actually just kind of boring. So the way that it captured that, and also the disaster piece score for the film, which combines Bernard Herrmann orchestral stuff like from Hitchcock with video game sounds as he's like solving the puzzles and shit, and then also going into horror and stuff. Just for me, it was like a really underrated film. And
definitely underrated, 100%.
And for me, and especially because A24 buried it, they gave it the 2-week in New York and LA theatrical release. That was it. It didn't go anywhere else.
The only reason I found out about it was because I was on Letterboxd and I just looked up the director because I really love It Follows. And I'm like, oh, he came out with another film. I didn't even know about it. And then I just saw that Andrew Garfield was starring in it, so I'm like, okay, well, fuck yeah, I'll watch that. So it wasn't even based on any advertisements, word of mouth. I just happened to stumble upon it. And it's a bummer because more people definitely need to check it out. Yeah,
and then also we all went crazy with the conspiracies like later in the year. So it felt very truthful. It's like, no, there's no conspiracy. It's a bunch of rich morons doing all that shit right in the open, right in front of you. So it felt like a very 2019 movie, even though it was supposed to come out in 2018 and got delayed in release all the way until like the summer of 2019. But I'm pairing it with Relaxer, which is another film actually about a similar guy who feels like he
this is like the gross version of it.
This is more of like the chamber survival movie version of it, because he's kind of like this millennial guy who doesn't feel in control of his life, and even
no motivation,
and it also has like an apocalyptic background, and it also involves trying to find sort of meaning and catharsis through solving puzzles, in this case it's challenges, which is his brother is posing to him. And I really liked the lead actor's performance in this film, which kind of took it over the edge for me. Joshua Burge in the film. He kind of looks like Buster Keaton with like the wide eyes and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
And for me, it was a gross out survival comedy And then it was also like this masculine anxiety chamber drama about, you know, how his relationship with his brother is clearly based on it. Like it's mean spirited. It's very based clearly on.
And he paints it to
a hierarchy of dominance and
the older brother paints
competition
it as like a thing that he's doing for his brother.
Yes,
which I really
he's making him stronger.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're too weak. I'm the one. I'm gonna strengthen you up.
He's very clearly an abusive brother, which stems from the fact that also it's implied later in the film that they have a father who is like a sex offender or something like that.
Yeah.
What's odd is that he has the best relationship with his dad because his dad was nice on the surface and abusive behind the scenes. And then his brother is outwardly abusive, which he assumes has probably come from the other side of the father. So it's kind of like the two sides of the father a little bit.
Right.
But then it's also like this dilapidated, like apocalyptic, like psychological experience that he has inside his apartment where he's stuck and his brother's like, you have to beat whatever level 237 of Pac-Man, which is supposed to be impossible.
And you can't leave this couch at all.
No, so even to eat, he can't get up. He's got to like call this dude to like order him food. So he's stuck on this couch, and
then the people that come like make fun of him for being in that situation too. But he has to have them come.
Yes, and the way that I describe it is that it was textured entirely with hot couch guy detail, which is a theory by Felix Biederman of Chapo Trap House about, you know, like the hot couch guy. Everyone knows a hot couch guy in their life. He's the guy that you go over to his place. He's got a leather couch. You're staying the night. He doesn't have a sheet for you. You got bare skin on the leather couch. It's hot. He's got like 6 fans going,
trying,
but it's not working.
They're trying their best.
In the background, on repeat, he's got the DVD menu of Running Scared, starring Paul Walker, going,
and it just won't turn off.
It smells like bad weed and bong water. He's got like 3 different pizzas in the fridge, but like you don't know which one was the first one you opened up.
So it's just too risky to try any of them.
You know, there's like Mountain Dew stains on the carpet, you know, like this is hot couch guy stuff. And watching this movie, I was like, this is a guy who is in tune with hot couch guy stuff. So
he's
again,
lived a few months this way.
Yeah. The movie's got like the smell of like curdled milk. It's got like, he's playing like Tony Hawk Pro Skater. So it's got like that pixely vibe to it. There's like Taco Bell wrapping and dried cherry cola on the carpet. There's the glow and hum of like TV static and stuff like that. So for a movie detailed like that, which is just, you know, for a lot of people that, like when I was a kid, I would have loved to stay home from school every day and just play video games all day.
Me too.
So
that was brutal.
So like this was kind of like turning that into a horror survival situation.
Yeah.
So for me, I was sitting there watching it and I was like, that's such a visually inventive thing to try to do.
Yeah, I got to give it another go for sure.
And just the way that it makes it so viscerally gross. Again, just with some of the Kenny versus Spenny like fucking challenges where he's drinking milk until he basically like throws it up, and the way that it's sad and deals with, you know, sort of like his relationship with his abusive brother, and then the way it takes on sort of like 90s video game slackerdom, and then the way again it all channels it into, eventually it goes into the realm of like apocalyptic surrealism and stuff like that.
Yeah, they go into Y2K and things like that.
Yeah, and it also takes on a bit of Buñuel's, I think it was called, I can't remember if it's called The Avenging Angel or something like that, where people are all trapped in a room and they don't know how to get out and stuff like that, but he's trapped in kind of like this circle of relationship with his brother and also this slackerdom, and then also the movie ends with a fucking Cronenberg scanner's head explosion.
Yeah, to his fucking brother.
Yeah, which he cathartically purges his brother out of his life, and then he imagines seeing his father, and like it's just, God, that movie actually really, really surprised me, and it made a good pairing with Under the Silver Lake. But I've been going too long, so we got to go. Jamie's number 10.
For sure. So the first one is Serenity. I'm doing it. I have to do it. And this is the thing. I rewatched it because I'm like, I can't just give it the 11 spot, I guess it is, or the double 10 spot, because when I watched it the first time, the reason I fought it was just because I was so shocked, so flabbergasted by this film that there was a bit of like irony in me liking it, because it is totally batshit crazy.
Matthew McConaughey's character name is Baker Dill.
Yeah, exactly. There's just, it's endless. And I sat down, I rewatched it, and it still hit me that same way. Like I will say the first 20 minutes does have, it has plenty of corny dialogue.
Yeah.
It has stuff like, he says something like, I'm a hooker with no hooks, things like that. Like we're talking
That's good,
straight.
though. That's
oh,
good,
it
though.
is, but it's also, you know, I mean, it's definitely has a cheese factor or the dialogue can be unnatural. Let's say that. But the thing is after I watched it the first time, it's revealed that this whole thing is a video game built by his son, who's trying to connect with him on some way.
Yeah.
And so when I'm thinking that way, and I'm looking at the dialogue, I'm looking at all these weird circumstances, like when Matthew McConaughey has sex with Anne Hathaway, and that's the kid's mom and dad, and so he's technically playing having sex with his mother, and then when Matthew McConaughey finishes or whatever, he gets up and he says, "I win."
Won. Yeah.
And when the first time, I was just like, what the fuck are we doing here? What is this?
Yep.
But then I've realized, I'm pretty sure the kid has internalized this kind of like sexual violence, because we have Jason Clarke's character
Who
is
abuses
just,
Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, and
playing
he's
the mother,
like,
yeah.
he's written to be the most piece of shit person like ever, like almost unbelievably bad.
I love his line where he's like, "Give me the rod."
Give me the fucking rod. Yeah. He's an animal in this movie, an absolute animal. And so what I think the son is essentially doing is taking the violence that he sees, thinking that the sex and the violence is kind of connected to love as well. So that's why when he and also because he's obsessed with games, so he has a win or lose binary kind of thing. So I think that as I was watching it, I'm like, I think this works more than people want to give it. It's still insane, and I would totally understand if someone's like, this is just too much for me.
Well, that's just it, is that it's one of those things where it's structured like that genius recontextualizing twist that hits at the end of the film.
And you have that guy that's
the
like,
twist-
the rules, I am the rules, and all that.
But the twist hits like 50 minutes into the 2-hour movie.
And that's the thing. He's not revealed that it's a video game until an hour into the film, and then you still have 40 minutes of him knowing that he's in the video game, and then this is where the film gets the most interesting.
Because then it's just like this like insanely weird like Truman Show type film, basically.
Exactly, because everyone else, and the thing is the characters, they're programmed. So they have lines that they say, and there's only certain things that they can say. And Matthew McConaughey starts to figure that out. So you have several scenes where he goes into like a store or whatever, and then he just like looks at them deep in their eyes, and he's channeling that true detective shit at this point, where he's like really deep and brooding and drunk and just like this kind of unhinged animal, and he just starts to go like, "Oh yeah, do you believe that?" Like, it's just looking deep in their eyes like, "I know the truth, motherfucker," and all this, and it's endlessly entertaining.
And again,
then you get
Matthew
to the point,
McConaughey yells about tuna.
Yep.
He yells about Iraq.
Yep. Because he used to be a soldier, and you assume that he dies, and that's why
And the son
made
has
the
programmed
game.
a version of him.
Right.
Yes. So he's technically living his life as a computer generated in like a weird like Minecraft fishing game that his son has invented.
And one of the best lines is when he's hammered. He's just downing a 26er of rum
While driving.
He's sweating, like, and McConaughey's going for it too. He's not phoning this in at all.
Yeah.
He's really believing in this character, and it helps so much, especially just with how kind of funny and insane the whole premise is to begin with. Him taking it so seriously works on so many levels. And the one line where he's down in the rum and he just goes like, "Oh yeah, Iraq, I was real good at those first person shooters." And you're just, it's unbelievable. And then it gets to a realm where he's
Jamie and I watched it in the theater in January, and we were hooting and hollering.
For sure. I think we were the biggest fans in that theater, 100%. And then it gets to the point where he's like actually talking to his son in the physical world as the character in the video
where he's
game.
like, "It's a really good thing you did that murder, son."
Yeah, I will
Good
say,
job on the murder.
I will say the morality of the film, a little muddy. But I still really enjoy what it's doing, and I love watching the
nailed that
digital
murder.
world.
Oh,
just,
yeah.
like disappear
like
in front
Inception
of him.
shit.
Yeah, that was great. So and to have this kind of corny like.
You're the only person who put this movie on the top 10 probably for the whole year, so I respect it.
I think I don't think anyone else will do it. So I'm proud of it. And then it's just like that corny sign off, there's a you and a me somewhere. And it's just gets my heart gets my heart going. So yeah, it's I loved it. I fucking loved it. The tie is gonna be with Knife and Heart. Now I think I'd probably put Knife and Heart a little bit above it, just because Knife and Heart's a more sincere film, at least for how I perceive it. Right. Serenity is completely sincere, by the way, but Knife and Heart is it's about we mentioned it briefly already, right? Yeah. So this one is about the gay porn a gay porn production company, and essentially in
1979, I think.
Yes, based in the 70s, and a killer starts to go around and just kind of off the stars of the film, and you also have this director. Who's also seems to be the overall boss of the company as well. It seems that she is harboring some real violence inside her somewhere. I'd have to rewatch it again to really analyze it a little deeper. Yeah. But what I loved about the film is, one, this mix between horror and comedy. Like, it's a very funny film.
Oh yeah.
But it also goes places that are completely horrifying. Like, it goes to a place where, like, there's a where when the director essentially rapes her girlfriend.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like showing her possessive nature, and then it correlates with this killer who's doing all these killings that are very similar to like cruising, where they're
targeting them.
They're targeting,
and
it's sexual at first, but it's violently sexual, and then it turns into the kills. And I guess the difference between this one and cruising is just they go a little bit more creative with how they show the kills. Like we were talking about that blowjob kill and things like that. So it's
I mean, the first murder is basically ripped from the first murder in Cruising.
Oh, right? yeah. It has to be a direct reference for sure.
Yeah. You can tell that that's what they're going for. And I liked a lot of it specifically because I felt like some of the character stuff was surprisingly like kind of tender. Like it was kind of nice. Like what they were taking the emotional stuff of them seriously, but then they were also addressing the fact that there's something about performing on film and putting someone else on film that leads you to this idea that you're kind of controlling them a little bit. So I felt like her as a porn director versus her as like an emotional person was like, I wouldn't say they were contradictory, but like it was leading to some tensions. For sure. And I think that was what went wrong with, because I think her girlfriend was also, I think, an editor on the films that she worked for. Like she would leave like little messages sometimes in the film footage for her.
And this was when also she was leaving her. And I think that's where like she
so
was
I feel
getting
like
that
her position as director, where she's so used to controlling people, it wasn't working in her real life. But then also it has this idea of like people being sort of preserved inside of film as well, which is why I thought it was kind of meaningful. For sure. Where like there's all these lives of these these queer people who were killed and murdered, especially in that particular time period. Yeah, and that the film, they kind of like live on through this film, which is kind of like what you were talking about when we talked off the show, when you were talking about how much you really liked the credit sequence and stuff that too.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. They go into like this
also, by the way, the film that they're making in the film, I just wanted to hit this home. It's called Homicidal. Which is just fucking great. What a great joke.
That's so good. And the dialogue I love, because they show scenes from the production, like the actual movie that they make, and they are hilarious. The dialogue is so funny, and the performances are just fantastic.
Yeah.
That abstract
and the gorgeous lighting and the giallo.
So interesting, because it's at first it's very like flamboyant. They have this white room and this fountain, and then one of the guys is dressed as like a what do they call that? Like a half goat, half man. I can't remember what they're called.
Oh yeah, I can't remember either.
Like imp or something. I don't know. I can't remember. But he's walking around with like a flute, and it's like this like ancient Greek mythology thing.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it's with a lot of the people who were murdered throughout the film. A lot of them.
Right. And then it's weird.
So it's kind of like where all of them have gone after being murdered.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be this almost like this heavenly erotic kind of moment.
And everyone's there, and then there's this odd thing where this darkness overlooms, and then you don't really know what it is, but everyone kind of has this frightened look, but the director seems to almost have a smirk on her face. Yeah. And I don't know where that comes from, but you were saying that it connects to the AIDS crisis.
Yeah, so I read Willow Maclay Caitlin, when she was writing about the film, she wrote that to her represented the looming AIDS epidemic, which was like the film very strategically takes place a couple years, like just before, like on the precipice of that about to be happening in real life.
Yeah.
And that it reminded her of the idea of like the 10 Commandments when like the clouds all cover up.
Yeah.
So kind of like this,
That's cool.
this
I
like,
like that.
this like ancient purge is kind of coming specifically of the queer community. And the thing that I actually did go back and rewatch because I remember you saying, I remember she smirked, and I was like, I don't remember that. So I went back and rewatched.
Am I wrong?
No, she does smirk.
Okay.
But not at the sight of the looming cloud, at the sight of the person. She's looking at the person and being like, we are together, that this is coming, but I'm with you kind of deal.
Yeah, I for some reason I read
so
it
it's
as
still
more
kind of like a
ominous,
sense of
but-
like solidarity of like these two people are together while this thing is coming to get them kind of deal.
For sure.
And that happens in the fucking credits of the movie.
Yeah. It was very like it's just a 5-minute sequence, but it's one of the most impactful moments in the whole thing, and it's during the credits.
Yeah, so really stylish giallo slasher, very specifically about sort of like the queer community in the 70s. Very beautiful, very gross.
Yeah, very colorful too. I love the color schemes in it. It's very good.
Absolutely, I love that sequence when they all turn on the killer inside the porno theater.
Oh yeah, and he's like this like grotesque kind of I don't know, deformed.
But then he was
man.
also a victim. I guess his father like caught him with a gay lover or something like
then
that,
burned him,
and then burned him. Yeah, which made him scarred.
So it's like just generational,
which makes him
constant-
go after the fellow gay people because they were like, why aren't you guys as traumatized as me, kind of deal and stuff like that.
And so and another calling back to kind of like cruising again, where it's like you're fighting your own like sexuality basically.
Exactly.
So yeah, it was great.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you put that on the list because it was really close to making my list, and I just couldn't fit it on there. But moving on from the 10s here, we are going to move on to number 9, which for me happens to be Shadow.
Nice. Awesome.
I won't go too deep into it because we actually just did a bonus transmission for the Patreon folks.
Yeah, we do have a review on that bad boy.
Where we talked about it for like kind of like 20 minutes. But what I discovered talking with Jamie about the film that kind of clarified this movie for me, obviously it's directed by Zhang Yimou, who is sort of like the iconic Chinese filmmaker behind such films as Raise the Red Lantern and To Live, in more of his drama wheelhouse. In his wuxia wheelhouse, he got really famous off doing House of the Flying Daggers and Hero as well. Yeah. And then most recently, he's been doing film. He did The Great Wall.
Still got to check that out, actually.
Yeah, very fun. Definitely him compromised by a $250 million budget or whatever it was, but still, lots of great colors, lots of great action still. But the thing that we noted talking about it when we talked about it on the bonus transmission was how stripped of color this one is. That usually for him, like color, like fighting and war in the military is a sense of almost like an artist. He views it that way, and he did that a lot in The Great Wall. All the heroes have like giant purple or giant green armor, and they have a flag that matches them while they're like running up and down the Great Wall and doing these amazing moves. Yeah. And the action is still incredible in this film, but it's a very monochromatic universe. It's very grayscaled. The only thing that has any color in it at all is basically a slight skin tone and the blood.
Yeah.
And that's basically it.
A lot of red.
Yes. So obviously the choreographed pageantry of it is as beautiful as ever, but there's more gore to it. There's more grossness to it. There's more nihilism to it. I find usually that like in something like Hero, the warriors are expressing themselves. Yeah. It's emotional. The combat there's so much feeling. There's so much character.
Yeah.
And in this, Jamie was right when he said that I couldn't really latch on to the characters, and I feel like it's part of what he's doing is this idea of kind of
intentional for sure.
Yeah, there's just he feels clearly very different now, I think, about military power and war, and he sees less sort of like beauty and artistry in it, and he sees more just kind of the death and the grossness and kind of almost the meaninglessness of it, because
this one he seems like he's more focused on the system itself that's destroying the humans.
Yeah.
Whereas
because it's Hero, it's convoluted,
it seems like
right?
it's more like he wanted to focus on the actual human side of things, even though it's surrounded by a bunch of war and systematic oppression and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's just
this one he's just diving right into it.
Yeah, well, I would just say that like the plot is actually like really convoluted. Like it's kind of like
I couldn't even really say what it is right now, to be honest.
No, because it's really just about a king like trying to take back like a certain dominion, and like again, it almost doesn't matter because the whole point is he's saying, what is the point of all of this? What are they doing,
'Cause
really?
at the end of the day, they're all just going to kill each other.
Yeah, the film is called Shadow because it's about a guy who is this ancient, or not ancient, but like he's this very well-respected, well-known military commander who's just like this amazing fighter, but he's wrestling with the fact that he's aging and he can't like fight as well anymore. So he, kidnaps this young boy from his family and trains him to be his shadow, this exact replica that he can send into battle instead of him. And then it's from the point of view of this shadow, this guy who was basically kidnapped and then invented to be just like this symbol of military war, and that was his only definition. Then he's like, well, what's the point of this war even? So this guy's having like an existential crisis about his own personal life because his personal life is so entrapped with this system of military power.
It's all he's been trained to do.
Exactly.
It's like he doesn't have any other skills.
But then there's like this complicated thing where he's dealing with the Shadow's older wife. Starts to kind of fall in love a bit with the Shadow because it's the same guy. It's just a younger version. And then there's so much betrayal and intrigue and like double crossing and decoys and like the movie is just absolutely insane in that regard. And then again, the action featuring just, amazing steel umbrella bladed combat.
Yeah, the umbrella combat's unbelievable.
Yeah, that bit
just adds such a sense of
where
style,
the guy using the umbrella and he sticks it into the bamboo yin and yang combat stage that they're fighting on. The wood piece sticks out, and then the guy power kicks him across it, and he gets gored by the fucking splinter that's sitting out of it. And then obviously the Beyblade dudes too, as they basically have an umbrella on top and below them, and then they're spinning down the hill, and all the people are like, "What the fuck?" And then they're firing crossbows outside of while they're spinning around.
Oh my god! I've never seen anything like it.
Is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And I found when we were talking about it more in depth on the Patreon bonus transmission that I found more intrigue in this story of this sort of like this contradiction of the yin and yang, and in a constant state of kind of war, and the kind of like the reason why and how people get caught up in that, and like how obviously their bodies are also sacrificed to do that and stuff like that. So yeah, I got a lot out of Shadow, and again, didn't get much of a theatrical release. Don't see a lot of people talking about it, so I definitely wanted to include it on the list because like a big martial arts film like that, expensive and beautiful. And, even more interesting than when I first watched it. Because when I first watched it, I was in the same mode as you, where I was like,
I was overwhelmed.
I was like, what the fuck is happening? But then when we talked about it, I was like, there's more happening there than I seem to recall happening.
I'm definitely going to rewatch it because I just felt, story-wise, I just felt overwhelmed. It was hard for me to recap
it's a very
anybody what it was
confusing
about.
plot. And I didn't realize until the second time that, like, it seems like that's kind of what he's going for, is that war is confusing and pointless and, like...
And the fact that, like, like, a lot of movies, especially, like, Hero, for instance, they have, like... colors to signify like which team they're on or whatever, but everyone's in like gray and black, so it all kind of just melds together even within the fighting. And so you can never really know who you're rooting for or whatever's going on, but in a great way, because that's what he's intentionally trying to do.
Hell yeah. But your number 9.
For my number 9, it'll be Hollywood. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The reason I'm going to put it on the list was just what I said before. It felt to me like we were on the sets of all these movies that we've been discussing for the last couple of years. Yeah. And there are still some moments that are definitely the kind of the manly genre thing. Like we have Brad Pitt like beating up that Charles Manson guy when he won't let him in the car or whatever it is. We have when he's versing Bruce Lee.
I really liked right before that when what's his face? I can't remember what the guy is. The same guy you're talking about, the Manson guy, when he's riding the horse through the movie set, and Tex, it looks like an old Western and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like so stuff like that was
the
great.
scene where Brad Pitt walks through an abandoned movie set that is like festering like a movement of violence and stuff like that inside of it. That's just, it's good stuff.
Yeah, and that's pretty much why I thought it still fit on the list, and I just had such a good time with it. It was really Tarantino's Manson directed this bad boy. It really was Tarantino's like in my like his most lighthearted film, even though we do have a very violent ending. He still paints it in such a comedic way that I was thinking it was going to be a much deeper film in regards to the horror and kind of the murders themselves, but the fact that he just subverts it completely and he's just like, you know what? No, we're not gonna show murders. Like I saw people arguing that it disrespects the people that were murdered and stuff like that. So I'm like, so are you saying that the respectful thing would be to have Tarantino go full gore and just show all of the deaths, show the baby death and all that? Is that what you were looking for? Because that's what we were discussing when we exited the theater. It was kind of like, of course, this is how it was going to end in a sense.
Yeah, because we both went into it expecting kind of like the tragedy of it, and so that lingers over the entire movie.
Exactly, and he knows that too. I think.
Yeah, he does.
He makes it so lighthearted throughout the first 2 hours that you're like, well, here it comes. Here it comes, and then he just goes, nope, we're still going to kind of make it this feel good vibe, and we're just going to be like, what if this never happened? What if it was a better world? You know. And, I mean, better world in some regards. DiCaprio's character is still kind of a piece of shit, but, you know, at least they're not being murdered.
Yeah, and there was some interesting conversation around, like, that catharsis that he provides us is, like, a little simplistic.
Sure.
Like, it's a little kind of, like, there was a lot more to what made, you know,
that happen.
that year. And, like, there's more social context. There's more... So his dream is, like, a little juvenile, like, this idea of, like...
For sure.
But it's also that's also what makes it funny.
Yeah.
Too.
And I also think he knew what people were going into the film for.
Yeah.
So I think he was like, I'm not giving that to you. You know what I mean? Because I do feel like there was at least 50% of people going in and going, we're going to watch Tarantino do Manson murders, you know?
Yeah.
And it's gross, but it's a reality of what a lot of people go to films for. So I like that he was just like,
going into it, that's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, oh, me too.
But I mostly went in thinking, how is he going to do that?
That's what it was, exactly. I was kind of like, how are you going to get away with this? How are you going to pull this off and make it empathetic?
And it was funny, I was actually just, I'm glad you brought this up because I was just talking, because people were just having this argument again on Twitter the other day, so I was just talking about this the other day, and I actually said that I thought that the catharsis of it is still sort of muted by the reality. That for me, there's still something sad about this movie because
we know the truth. We know what actually happened.
So what he's going for, and we talked about it in our bonus transmission when we talked about it, is that he's expressing, you know, Tarantino using this, he's in his historical rewriting phase. He clearly believes in the power of fantasy and movies and what they can do, but I felt like this was the first one he made out of all of those where he was also wrestling with like the limitation of what cinema, because cinema can't bring her back. Like, it's like, yes, she's there, but I love that final scene where you never really see her, that she talks almost like ghostly through the monitor, and then he welcomes her through the gate, almost like he's joining her. Exactly, like joining with her. Yeah. So for me, like Inglourious Bastards, like that was a film where he was righteously rewriting something. He was weaponizing
they just
movies.
Rip apart Hitler.
Yes.
And no one's mad about that.
and I love that he does it at a propaganda movie house where he's showing like, look, the Nazis weaponized movies. Yeah. And he's saying we should weaponize movies against them. And like that kind of stuff. So for me, it was like cinema has been abused for evil, and he's like, I'm gonna righteously try to fix that. It was like a call to arms almost. And then so when I was watching this one, this felt different. This felt more like an acknowledgement that history, you know, despite all of his efforts, it can't be changed, that he's only responding to it. So to me, the fact that people are saying that this is like a childish dream, to me, just is what the movie is about.
What it is.
He's dreaming of a time and place that will never actually exist. Yeah. And he's saying, we'll live here for a little while, but as soon as those movie house lights go up, and as soon as the fairy tale title card comes up where it says "Once Upon a Time in Hollywood" right at the end with that like very mournful music. Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's him acknowledging mournfully that like movies can only do so much.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And
it's also just an incredibly funny movie overall.
Yeah, and if you just want, that's the thing, if you want to sit down and just be entertained, it's has
a great
plenty of that
movie
too. It's just, it's very upbeat.
We talked about in the bonus transmission where we were saying something along the lines of that like it felt like, especially for Margot Robbie's Sharon Tate, that he wasn't writing her like a Tarantino character. It was very slice of life. It was just watching her live her life and what Hollywood kind of looked like in this time period. So and Brad Pitt is so good at the movie,
so
just
good.
in general. I like
I love the long scene of him beating up Bruce Lee and then getting fired, and then it cuts right back to him and he goes, okay. Like he's fair enough. Yeah. It's just there were some great moments.
Just his
with him.
friendship and the way that he's
And the
always
acid trip
the
is
way that
unreal.
he's always there for Leonardo DiCaprio's
Yeah,
character.
like them just
I found
watching
very
his old
moving.
show and stuff. It's just so heartwarming.
Well, and I
like,
love that he invites him in. He's just like, "Do you want to come in and like watch some FBI?"
Yeah.
And he's just like, "I already brought the beer, man. I thought, I just figured that's what we would do. Let me grab the 6-pack
Man,
in
I'm
the
way
back.
ahead
I'll
of you,
come in."
brother.
And then there's the whole part where they're just watching the show and they're basically just doing like commentary.
yeah.
Where
It's awesome.
Where it's like streets of silence or whatever, and he's like, "Not when my boy Rick Dalton is on him," or
Yeah.
whatever. He's like,
It's so great. It's so hangout, and I love it.
it's just it's
Yeah.
so fun to watch.
It is.
And it's a really good hangout movie.
Absolutely.
So that was your number 9.
Yes.
Moving along here to my number 8, I had Lose.
Nice. Yeah, that was it was unreal.
This one carried over. We did a bonus transmission. We did a lot of bonus transmissions this year, I guess. We did a bonus transmission on this one too, but again, it was a thesis student in Germany doing his version of kind of like an 80s possession film, but doing it in this like really creepy 16 millimeter atmosphere.
Yeah.
And also turning it into like a psychodrama where we talked about where it's kind of like psychologically investigating its characters through like memory and therapy and stuff like that.
And then how like it almost seems like this real world kind of starts to mold with the spirit world.
Yeah, I mean,
as it
we
goes.
talked about the inciting scene of the film, which happens in the middle, where she's like, there's a doctor there trying to get like seemingly talk to this thing that maybe has possessed this girl.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get her to recall her memories while she's in the room. So she's driving a car in a chair, but all the sounds of her actually driving the car are there.
Yeah.
And then also it's
Sound work is so good.
so
in
it's
this movie.
infected by the memories he's bringing out of her, other memories that she's putting into it, as well as there's possibly memories in there of the demon that's actually possessed her.
Yeah.
And then also her desires, which it sounds like are partially sometimes romantic. Like she might
Yeah.
even be romantically involved with the demon that has
It
possessed her
seems
or
so.
something.
And the fact that to transfer the demon, it's through a kiss. So it's
Yes.
through like a romantic act, something that would
Exactly.
be traditionally loving. So
Yeah,
and then
and-
I mean, I think there's even near the end they even discussed how it was like. Was it like two demons almost falling in love with each other and
Something like that.
trying to find
I
bodies
honestly
to
have
like
to
actually
rewatch because
connect
it's
with?
actually quite confusing and,
Yeah.
and the style is really awesome and it's so like subjective, like it gets you so much into the
Yeah.
headspace of a character going through this, and it has this really dreamy like synth soundscape to it. And it reminded me, I brought it up when we did the bonus transmission, it reminded me a lot of Cure, which we did on
for
the
sure.
show, just because of those, it has those mundane, like wide compositions
Yeah.
of like a possessed person like walking through them, and there's something off kilter about that because like they're not moving like a real person would, but the frame
Yeah.
is so static and everything else is so like real, I
Grounded
guess.
in realism, yeah.
Yeah, but then also it has these really intense, like surreal, abstract filmmaking qualities when it gets into the memories and stuff. So yeah, the way that the movie is invested in the therapist, it's invested in this girl, it's invested in this relationship with this other girl she had in a previous time, who maybe also summoned the demon, and then also the relationship with the demon. So these 4 different people, it's in all of their subjective points of view at the same time. So it's about, it's blurring stylistically, the actions that they're doing, the feelings that they have, the memories that they have, and again, also including the demon in that, who's maybe possessed her.
Yeah.
So all of those point of views just like bleed into each other, and they become completely indistinguishable. So by the time you reach the end of the film, in this really creepy static shot, like in Cure, but you're not sure how to feel about it because there's been so many contradictory feelings that you've had. So the way that I described it was like, have you just witnessed an unholy union like you would in a normal possession film? Like
Right.
a demon
Something
has
that's
possessed
demonic,
this
it's
person.
hell-bound, yeah. that
Right.
kind
So
of
is
thing.
that what you've watched? Or have you watched someone finally achieve emotional harmony?
Yeah, yeah.
Where like they've maybe actually figured something out. They have actually cathartically fused with the demon as a way of like actually overcoming what was contradictions and problems, that internal issues that they had. And you leave the movie being like, I don't know which one of those two things happened. Maybe both of them happened.
Yeah, right.
Which is just a really awesome way to feel. And either way, it's 70 minutes. If
And it
you
has
can
a
find
very
it.
killer final shot with some great like sound work of the guy. I think he's like talking over a walkie-talkie or something like that,
Yeah.
trying to warn people, but you just
Well, see, like was it that, or was he also inside as well? Like
Oh,
I
yeah,
couldn't
that's-
find out if he was trapped in the body too
that's
as
true,
they're walking
because
around.
they never reveal that. That's also the genius of, honestly, the sound
very
design in this
ambiguous.
movie is awesome. It's so good because the way that they do that, it helps create that kind of confusion that I think he's going for.
Yeah, you feel like you're in this really weird space.
Yeah,
almost
the whole time. Yeah, especially once you get into that room with the interrogation, it just goes completely unhinged.
So in terms of the form and the style, this one hasn't like left my brain like with what he's doing. So and it's one of those things where the ambiguity and the contradictions of it, they don't like leave me feeling like confused or like upset. Like they leave me feeling
it's not unsatisfying.
If anything, it just like deepened the film. It made me think about it more. So if anyone has a chance to see that, it's a film called Lose, and the filmmaker is a guy named Tillman Singer. And again, fucking thesis film. Fuck this guy.
This isn't like holy
I'm putting
hell.
a thesis film, a student film, on my fucking top 10 of the year.
Like he is a talent. I can't wait to see what he does for sure.
Real.
My number 8 is Parasite, which was just fantastic.
Good film.
The thing that got me the most, one specific scene that I think kind of shows what the whole film is doing, was that the rain scene where it basically shows how it's the rich people, the most that they have to go through. It's like, oh, my camping trip has just completely been destroyed. That's a bummer. Yeah. But you can still camp in the backyard, our huge 100-foot square backyard. It's all good. Whereas the poor family, they go back and their entire house is flooded. All their property is destroyed, you know? And it's just that difference.
And they have to sleep overnight in that gymnasium.
Right. And it's just that difference.
In like class reality, like the physical reality.
Of just something as simple as rain.
Like even up until that point, like they're interacting with each other as if almost like the idea is that they pretend that there's almost like an equal, like they're talking friendly to them. They're very nice. They talk about how nice they are in this way that like they're treating them like equals, but what he's going for is the physical reality that they aren't.
Yes, like even if they view each other as that, it's not. They just aren't.
And by the time you reach the end of the film, they're very clearly saying that. Again, it's like this almost like this social reality is that you kind of have to pretend that you are. Yes. But really you're not.
And then I also love that he has both, like he has the two poor families kind of having to butt heads in order to just create an opportunity so that they can have a job. So then it ends up in just the poor pretty much just violently fighting each other in order to get the job that should probably we should be more available to people. So it's a really just good look at class difference, and in a way that isn't so like some of the times with those films, I feel like they just paint all the rich people as like these almost cartoonish characters of evil.
Right, like an evil,
whereas I like that these people were still very like, you could empathize with them and stuff, and they weren't pieces of shit. It's just the movie itself wouldn't let you. It doesn't let the class difference escape you. Like it's always there. It's always overlooming.
Right, because they're not doing it like it's established in the film that like they just clearly don't seem to realize like what their accumulation does to other people.
Right, exactly.
And they don't seem to recognize that. And then what happens is obviously those contradictions over the course of the film, they reveal themselves, right?
Right.
Like that's kind of like
and I like it. He paints like
that's actually like the suspense of the film is that these transactional relationships of these class relationships, they butt up against each other until the point where like very clearly there's going to be a violent destination where someone has to win out.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone is competing technically.
Yeah, and it's and by the end, I won't say any spoilers just in case, but it's pretty heart-wrenching. I'll say that. It's It definitely goes to the darkest place it could have. Yes. So that's a bit of a bummer, but it's the reality. So, it was fantastic.
Hell yeah!
That was number 8. So we're on 7.
We're on 7. All right, sounds good. So my number 7 is one I don't think that Jamie ended up catching up with.
Oh,
interesting. It is. Long Day's Journey into Night.
I did miss this one. Yeah.
Yes. So
I don't know how.
I had a chance to rewatch it, but I watched this 2 years ago at TIFF. It took a long time for this to
Maybe
come
that's
out.
why I missed it. Maybe it was under like 2018 on Letterboxd.
Yes, it was on 2018.
So I didn't see it.
But it's by a Chinese filmmaker named Bygone, and it is a little bit stretching the definition of genre. I mean, it is the setting is very neo-noir.
Yeah.
It's very sort of mystery and crime, and involves gangsters and stuff like that. But the actual style is like incredibly dreamy and dramatic. And the thing about it, I think I've told you about this film, because this is the one that I got to see it at TIFF, and I prioritized seeing it as best as I could because it would be the only time I would ever see it theatrically in 3D, which is how it was designed.
Oh, okay.
And what happens is basically the first half, they just handed you glasses.
I do remember you telling me about
they,
this.
And they said, you'll know when to put them on, is all they said. So and I'm sitting here, it's an hour into the movie. I'm like, I haven't put the glasses on yet. I'm like,
it's like, did I miss it?
Yeah, is it like,
did we all miss it?
But the first half of the movie is basically just this guy. His father's passed away. He returns to his hometown, and his hometown starts bringing these fractured memories out of him, where he is recalling, a time where one of his close friends was killed by a gangster, and that there was like the gangster's girl was kind of like wandering around his local town, and I think it's called Cali.
Yeah.
And he made another film called Cali Blues. So clearly he makes films kind of like about sad, lonely men in his hometown.
Oh, okay.
So he does. This guy's walking around and he's having all these memories brought back to him. And there's these small details like the girl wearing a green dress, the girl eating an apple. And he's recalling how he wished that, he kind of fell in love with her, and he wished he could have got her out of that lifestyle and maybe escaped with her and had another life. And he's very regretful about, it sounds like it's implied that it was either she escaped, but nobody really knows. Maybe she was killed. The first half is us experiencing these memories as he's walking around, and he's sort of flashbacky, but like the way that the style's done is you can never really tell if it's a flashback or not. Like the hometown is so dilapidated in the flashback and in the modern time that you can't actually ever sometimes really tell until you see the girl if you're watching a flashback or not. But the second half, what happens is he liked going to the movies with her, so he goes back to the movie house where she's like eating an apple and she's crying watching like this old romance drama or whatever, and it's like a porno theater now. But he sits down and it's like a dilapidated, broken down theater, and they hand him the 3D glasses. He puts them on, and they hold on him putting on the 3D glasses. So that was to tell all the audience, everyone,
it's time.
Put our 3D glasses on. Title card: Long Day's Journey into Night.
Dude, that's crazy.
And then the remaining hour entirely is a single take 3D shot of a dream.
Oh, wow.
So it's him asleep in the theater, and it moves very slowly. The camera moves are amazing. Apparently, I think they had to shoot it 4 different times, but it's a 1 hour long shot.
Yeah.
That they had to shoot 4 times.
So wait, it's not like stitched together?
No.
They legitimately did the
all one shot using
Holy
a 3D
shit.
camera.
That's crazy.
And then you're watching him wander this dream, and all of those memories, all of those feelings, some of the details like the apple, there's a horse, there's the stuff, and he comes across it randomly in his dream.
Yeah.
He comes across the girl, but she's dressed differently. She's got different hair. He's imagining in his dream like maybe she did escape and she's living a new life and all of this.
Yeah.
And it just, the way that it dreamily and like romantically captures all of his memories and the textures of another time, and the way that specific objects and colors and places and feelings all just collapse into a single shot that he orchestrates with those things, like apple like rolls by or whatever suddenly in the dream
awesome.
while he's walking around. And the way that he gets it creates this bizarre kind of like discombobulated feeling, like a real dream, like a real out of body experience. Sometimes the camera,
but it's nice because you probably have some context given the first hour, right? So it's like
You
the
do.
abstraction isn't constantly
'cause
just like, what is this?
Because some people thought the first hour was like kind of slow and boring. They couldn't figure it out. And then it all makes sense when you get into the dream.
Yeah.
And you're like, he's brought all of this into the dream with him. And sometimes the camera will just like take off and like ride around up top for a little bit and then come back down.
Kind
and
of
stuff
similar
like that.
to I don't know if you've seen it. It's a Gaspar Noé film.
Enter the Void.
Yeah, is it like that?
I've heard some comparisons,
Okay.
but I think people in terms of subject matter, I've heard not quite the same. But like in terms of because I that's more POV, right?
Yeah,
because this
at least
isn't
the
POV.
the first 45 minutes is POV, but then because he basically the camera acts as his spirit, so he at one point dies, and then basically it's this odyssey of a spirit just going to places throughout the city and watching his friends interact and things like that.
So it's not quite as literal as that.
Okay.
But sometimes the camera will lose track of the character and then come back, or
Gotcha.
sometimes it will do other things. Like the
Gotcha.
camera kind of has a mind of its own a little bit as it's wandering around his
Okay.
dream. But the dream, you can tell, it's all constructed from inside of him. It's all internal. So it's just externalized in this one take, everything that he's previously been feeling on the inside. And the way that it just collapses the spatial conventions and the narrative storytelling and basically captures this feeling of like just that we are kind of like finite, that like, you know, he's looking at this previous time and he's trying to recreate her in this dream, and she's not quite the same. It doesn't quite work. And then it ends on this shot of kind of like a single firework stick kind of like burning out. And it's just like, that's what kind of like it feels like in life, is that the thing just moves and moves and moves and moves. And you're going to carry your feelings with you, but like time doesn't stop for you. And yeah, so and again, the way that that's wrapped up into this sort of like mobster drama. So again, the style is very dreamy and romantic, and but the actual setting itself is about like murdered gangsters and stuff like that. So sort of interesting, kind of pushes the definition of genre. But I thought about this film a lot since I saw it, and I especially loved being able to see it in 3D at the theater. And then I rewatched it again, and I was like, yeah, it's a really strong movie. So.
Yeah, dude, that I am 100% gonna watch that very soon.
Check it out. But you're number 7.
My number 7 is Dragged Across Concrete. Just fucking love S. Craig Zoller now.
He's so good.
He's so good. This movie definitely didn't hit me as hard, at least at first, as Brawl on Cell Block 99. I think Brawl is just so easy to connect to because it's just like, you know, one guy who's down on his luck trying to avenge his wife or his pregnant wife. It's easier to latch on to a character like that. You know, it's easier to understand.
Well, I also like that it stuck with his POV for most of that movie, right? Like you're just following this big bruiser around as he like walks into a room, and you can like feel his presence in the way that he moves. And
especially
and
just
stuff.
watching like Vince Vaughn do it, and he's got such a big physical performance.
Yeah, and also that he's kind of like emotionally sensitive too.
Yeah. And then to see him do this, where it's like he's still big and he's still very a powerful man. You know, he's definitely and has some corruption to him as well. But this time around, he gets to kind of do the bad cop, but also he's very funny in the movie, but with a lot of very politically incorrect humor.
Yes, that's Craig Zoller's wheelhouse.
And that's what he does. He has the muddled politics, and I just I fucking love it because there's really no filmmaker that's doing what he's doing right now. He's kind of just like making more right-wing films, and you don't see them. You never see them.
Yeah.
And I like that he's doing it, and I like that he's doing it in a not so simplistic way, like we'd see from Death Wish or something like that. You know,
right?
Like it's not like he's saying that these characters, these cops, are just good people doing their job.
He's still a full-blown exploitation filmmaker, is the thing, and I think he knows how to distance himself from his characters.
Yeah.
So, like, even if you think that Craig Zoller like believes some of the things that his characters are saying, I feel like his movie doesn't all the time.
Yeah,
like his movies are still pointedly critiquing his characters most of the time.
And I think he knows that too, in a sense.
Oh, he's aware.
I think he's completely aware. And
he's a very smart filmmaker. Regardless.
I enjoy the dad conversations that they have, like the one in the restaurant where they're just like, "Is this a man or a woman singing this?" And they're like, I don't know. Like just stuff like that. Like I love that old man grumpy humor and the attitude.
Especially coming from Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn.
Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn. I mean, come on, baby. So yeah, that's great. And then also the end, it seemed like a lot of people were saying like, you know, the stuff on race is a little muddled, but I found it to be pretty clear because at the end, once you see Mel Gibson's character do all these really bad things to a lot of minority groups to do his job, he at the end, his distrust for this black man is what gets him killed.
Yeah.
So obviously S. Craig Zoller isn't just like, yeah, he's got the right idea. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just love that he's able to mix these kind of muddled politics with some clarity as well. Like he still has ideas that I can agree with. It's just he always also backs them up with things that I'm like, oh, I don't know about that, and it's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, that was the contradiction of watching this film because I really liked Bone Tomahawk and I loved Brawl and Cell Block 99. Like that movie made me like a super fan. So when I watched Dragged Across Concrete, I was a little disappointed, despite the fact that I also really liked the film.
Yeah,
like it was this weird thing where I was just like, for S. Craig Zoller, I expected a little bit more. I found him a little simplistic just in the way that he, like, some of the writing and the humor was just like, it was a little bit like what I would expect out of like sort of like edgy troll kind of humor.
I get you
in that sense, but
I feel like he was doing a little of that on purpose though. Like
yes.
the thing with, and I get that since it's on purpose doesn't make it like you're gonna like it more. It's just I do think that there's a sincerity to it where like I do find that funny. I don't know. I've always found dad humor
do you know who would be like that? Probably a lot of cops.
Yeah, right. And I think I love that kind of that humor. I don't agree with what they say a lot in this film, obviously, but I see the humor in the disgusting nature of some of this shit. And although it's bad, he paints it in a way that
he definitely doesn't paint it in a good light. We'll say
no, but it's still in a way that you've. Like, it's not, certain things aren't funny, but it's the way that Mel Gibson, like the scene where he's with the girl from the drug dealer, the girlfriend of the drug dealer.
Yeah.
And he's like making fun of the fact, like, he's like, I don't speak Spanish. And then even when she's speaking English to him, he's just like, oh, I can't understand you.
Right.
Like,
they're
gross
overtly being racist
about that I laugh. Like, the timing is somewhat comedic. And, but I like that it makes me feel like this weird gray where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't.
You feel gross, but like it's inherently funny.
Yeah, exactly. So S. Craig Zoller, I think, is a master at that, and I can't wait to see what he does.
And I mean, stylistically,
oh Jesus,
the movie,
it's a beautiful movie.
It probably is like the most like beautiful one that he's made so far.
And I love the totally evil like bad guys that are just completely psychos. Like they're a little, they're obviously a little unrealistic. There have been people like that, but it's not the traditional crime of what crime usually is. But I do like that they just took that and they're like, well, instead of versing these oppressed minority groups, we're just gonna give you this full on fucking like Russian evil guy that's just taking out variety store clerks and doing whatever else. Yeah. So I
and the
really
way it's all
it.
wrapped up and again in his slow burn kind of like leathery pulp style that he has, that's like really gorgeous, like tranquil, like wide compositions.
Oh yeah.
And then
tons. He really likes to show the entire environment a lot of the time.
Oh yeah, and then the way that the way that it's matched with like his slow pacing, and then obviously his ferocious explosions of like carnage when he decides to go that route. Like again, the way that he does that and the way here that he also puts that into kind of like an Elmore Leonard like heist hangout style movie, which if you've ever seen like Out of Sight or Jackie Brown is another Elmore Leonard thing.
I've seen Jackie Brown.
It's got like that sort of like criminal hangout kind of vibe to it a little bit too, just in his own sort of more repugnant like twisted version of that.
And a lot of time you're looking at cops doing the criminal stuff too.
Right.
Because at a certain point they're doing it off duty. Like they're taking it upon themselves to do it. They've been kicked off the case and they're just like, fuck it, I've got things to do. I got crimes to solve.
Now, I actually didn't get a chance to rewatch this, so I do have to rewatch it at some point because I remember being like, all of this stuff it's typical Zoller stuff that I love.
Yeah.
And I remember just being a little deflated every once in a while when like his characters would say like these really lazy, immature things. But I also get that like those are the characters he's written, right? So it's not like, again, it's not like he's spouting.
Because even at the end,
out.
like Vince Vaughn has the thing with his girlfriend, and at the end, right before at the end, she
right before
says,
some gross shit happens.
She says, like, no, like I won't marry you kind of thing. And I think it's just, it's connecting his bad personality, his actions that he's taken in the past.
Yeah.
And just kind of, they've all come to this point, and now you don't get the love of your life, blah, blah, blah. Some other things happen. And, he's not just like, these characters are, like, they get what they deserve. Let's say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just you just have to get all the way to the end where that happens, because the first like
you gotta
half
go through
of the
a
movie,
lot of gross shit.
The first half of the movie when he's just Mel Gibson sitting there with his wife talking about how like I think the blacks are gonna rape our daughter any day.
Yeah, because they threw a slushie at her. I'm like, well, it's like bullying's bullying. Maybe don't throw slushies, but also let's not jump to rape. Easy, Mel.
Yeah. But yeah, if you guys like S. Craig Zoller, definitely. I mean, I'm assuming if you do, you probably check it out. If you haven't checked it out, I think it's definitely worth watching, no matter what, because like stylistically, and he's doing what no one else is doing right now.
Yep.
Even if it wasn't quite Brawl in Cell Block 99 for me,
Yeah,
which
I still
think,
prefer Brawl,
which I think just had a lot of those similar like economic anxieties and the crime and the institutional brutality stuff.
Yeah, like
and
the subterranean prison shit is unfucking real in that movie.
Yeah, and for some reason, I feel like I could just latch on to Vince Vaughn, because even the few times where he is like racist or gross in that movie, he usually does it out of calculation. Like he's usually such a composed guy who doesn't make any movement without thought. Yeah. And the few times he's racist, it's to like kind of like trigger people that he's about to engage in combat with and stuff.
He even makes fun of a guy that uses the gay slur.
Yeah.
So it's like he's surrounded by those characters,
right? See, I feel,
he connects with them.
I
but
feel
he's
like
also,
Vince Vaughn in that movie is much closer to probably what Craig Zoller is, and in here he's messing with just more repulsive characters.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Yeah. What number was that one?
That was 7, so we're on 6.
6. Holy shit, we are going to go for a while here, but that's fine. Let's do it.
Maybe we might want to crank them out a little faster.
We'll try. We keep wanting to talk about each one, though.
I know.
Number 6 for me is fucking Glass.
Nice.
I rewatched it again, and because it was
that's what I got to do.
It was closer to like the 10 or the 9. I rewatched it again, and it almost like had me tearing up when I was watching it the third time. So
hell yeah!
I bumped it up a little bit more because I really love Unbreakable, and I really love Split.
Me too.
And I watched this, and I couldn't quite figure out really what he was going for when I first watched it. And then the second time I watched it, it really just did click for me, the way that he was continuing his story of Unbreakable, which for anyone who doesn't quite remember, the main part of that story was that Sam Jackson playing Mr. Glass was this guy who sort of became super villainous because he has like that soggy bones thing where like he'll break really easily, you know, if someone just like kind of like taps him or whatever. And in that film, he is hunting down kind of like his polar opposite, someone who got super strength, because he's like, if I'm super weak, there's got to be someone out there who got the reverse. Like there's abnormalities in the human condition, and he orchestrates all these different collapses and things that look like accidental deaths, but ends up he planned them. And that was how he discovered that Bruce Willis has super strength or whatever, because he crashed his train, which he was the lone survivor of.
Right.
And the ending of Unbreakable is Bruce Willis kind of discovering that he was created, basically found out he was a superhero. His origin story came from the fact that this guy orchestrated it against him. This guy who was looking at these comic stories, and he talks about comic stories as a history, that they are a history of something that someone saw, something that someone felt one time, and they've taken it to this extreme imagery. And then he actually lives that experience. So when I went back and I rewatched Unbreakable, and then I came back to Glass, I realized that Glass was more of a continuation of that stuff, of this idea of the archetypes, of this idea of construction. And I read also an interview with Shyamalan after, which clarified it for me, which he said he directed the movie as if Mr. Glass was directing a movie.
Oh, okay.
So he designed it as like kind of like this master plan design. And when you rewatch the movie, you'll see how amazing the compositions are, the POV images, the way that he's edited them together, the way that he's really thought this through, and the way that he's orchestrated it. The same way that you might normally, where you'd think, oh, he got to a twist, but the twist is more emotional realization than it is plot.
That
almost.
was something because that's the thing with M. Night Shyamalan, you kind of always are anticipating that.
Because the plot twist isn't that shocking.
No.
What is kind of shocking is the
twist
emotional
is
reaction.
The fact that it wasn't a twist, right? Because
that it was that it was even more connected.
Right, because the movie tries to even trick you into the fact that it's like, well, maybe you were just experiencing like imaginative things. Like it wasn't all real. Maybe these people don't have powers. Maybe they just had abnormal situations or whatever.
Yes.
But then it's revealed again that no, these people have those powers, but the I guess the man or whatever was trying to make it seem like they didn't have them, like gaslighting them essentially.
Yes, exactly. So the way
that's fascinating.
The way that I viewed it is that if Unbreakable was this movie about, Elijah, comic books being the stories that we we tell ourselves so that certain realities and certain pains and traumas that we have make more sense. Like you're turning them into simplistic archetypes, the good guys and the bad guys.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like maybe you live in a world where you were born with this, you know, deformity and it's really terrible. And he's trying to make sense of that.
Yeah.
So he's trying to make sense of it through comic books and trying to give his pain purpose. He's just like, so because I have this pain, I'm going to channel that into becoming a supervillain.
Right.
And then in Split, it was all about how that shared pain could be like a sense of power. Like the idea of James McAvoy's character in that was that he was abused into having this multiple personality disorder that he has. And then his plan is to go out and make everyone like that.
Yeah.
Is to make everyone abused and traumatized, and so that they become their highest form. That it's almost actually a biological super.
Unlocking
It is a
power.
superpower to be inflicted with pain and to become something else, something stronger, something better.
Yeah.
So he views it as almost evolution. And in Split, I found that idea really powerful and really emotional in Split when they get to the end of Split, and he's like, "The broken are the more evolved," and he's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"You are impure," because she was abused by. I think it was her uncle or her dad's friend.
Yeah.
And she had like cuts on her and stuff like that from the abuse. So the way that it takes both of those ideas of this taking your pain, giving it purpose, and then how your pain can almost become power and how you can, you know, you can use
Yeah.
it to turn into something else. And the way that Glass takes both of those, and it basically tells you that like, there's a solidarity there, that all of these people are being sold as the supervillains and the superheroes. They're archetypes that have to duke it out. That's what they
Yeah.
have to do. And then they come to the end realization and they're like, holy shit, we're all similar. We're all victims in our own way. We're all like, there is a more clear, like, evolution of like emotional compassion that all these characters could hit. Like the girl who was technically abused by James McAvoy's character goes up to him and hugs him to get him back into his normal body so they don't shoot him and stuff like that.
Right.
And then he's laying there and he's being like, you know, it's not so bad in the light, and being awake with you when like the whole reason for his personality disorder was because the light was so hard before
Yeah,
with his
yeah.
abusive mother. So
Yeah.
now he's back and he's looking at this girl that he abused, and he's like, you know, they're having an emotional connection there. And the way that that is stomped out by just like this political power, this mundane reality. I love the bit where they're supposed to have that final fight at the big tower, and they set it up in the movie the
Yeah.
same way they would set up everything. They're like, oh, why are
They
they
have
talking
you kind of imagine it too, like they
this
set it
big
up
superhero
specifically.
movie
Yeah.
climax where the big bad guy and the big good guy fight each other at the brand new constructed building.
Yeah, and then it all blows up and like
of modern life and progressivism
but
and all
instead
of this.
it's a SWAT team just like taking.
Yeah. Instead, what if they couldn't even get to the big third act showdown
Yeah.
because they were too busy being brutally murdered in a parking lot?
Yeah.
By a reactionary, like militant counter-revolution group, basically,
Yeah.
who were like, the idea of superheroes threatens the status quo, so we just aren't going to allow them to exist. Again, abusing them even further. When again, we've been shown that there is a route here where all of these people are connected and
Yeah.
might have, they could help, they could do something more. But instead, the way that the world is organized, the world will react. It doesn't want to change.
Right.
So the abuse is going to continually be systemically perpetuated the same way it was at the end of Split when she gets into the cop car and you think she's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And instead, they're going to probably take her back to her uncle where she's going to be abused again.
Yeah.
So
it's just the endless
again,
cycle.
he's Shyamalan is just a really beautiful storyteller, and he very clearly is in the headspace of like people are feeling abused and traumatized, and he's channeling that again the way that he channels that into this like low budget superhero film, which is just a fuck you to in the face of what superhero
Especially
movies
what's
look
going
like
on
right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and the fact that this was basically like released by Disney, distributed anyway later
really?
by Disney. Yeah, just by circumstance, it happened
okay.
to be distributed by their live action arm, Buena Vista or whatever.
Yeah.
And clearly, it's like a fuck you to corporate
whole
control
thing,
and
yeah.
like this idea of individuality being snuffed out and like stuff like that. So the
I
dude's
gotta
just
rewatch
he's
it,
a
man.
really idiosyncratic filmmaker, and I found this movie really trying to get individual expression into like a commodified world and passing on images and feelings. And I love where she's like, comic books aren't valid history,
Yeah.
is what she says at one point. So Yeah, gotta say, and the way that again that all reverberates through these characters, like psychologically and physically, and the shared power of victimhood and stuff like that. It's really powerful stuff, actually.
Yeah,
and
dude.
it ends on the line where they say, "We exist."
Yeah.
And I realized watching it the third time, it has the same ending as They Live,
Oh, really?
where they show the world that superheroes exist. It ends
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
quite as hilarious and like it's
No,
not
yeah,
as visceral.
it's the big reveal.
But the same
yeah.
idea is that we haven't actually answered. He hasn't given you an answer to this problem, to these institutions. He's just said people out there know the truth now. They got to figure it out from there.
Yeah, yeah. I got to rewatch it because I think the first time it was just I think I was just more focused on it's like what is he going to do, and I didn't find myself letting
plot,
me.
the plot is underwhelming when you eventually
Right.
get to the end, but
and
then
that's what I was focused on, which was the mistake. I should have just
Exactly.
been focusing on the characters themselves.
so that was why when I rewatched it, I was like, "Holy crap! This is way more about these characters and
Yeah.
these emotions than it is that plot." That it really clicked for me.
For me, the number 6 will be John Wick 3.
Beauty.
I just fucking loved this movie. I rewatched it to make sure that it still was as impactful as it was the first time. Now, I will say we were discussing how we wanted it to wrap up with this film, and it doesn't. But that being said, I do like that they're expanding on the universe. I do like that the first movie has this very just personal feel. You know, he's going in because of his wife and his dog, and he's got one specific target, and he's going to get him, and there we go. The second one, it starts to kind of unveil the systems and how it works within the hotel, but it's still very specific. It's still kind of like one guy, and there are a couple, but he's focused on somebody. But we still get this more information on how the system works, how the hotels work, and all that. With this one, they wanted to go even bigger, and so now we discover that there's like this high table that is also in charge of all of the hotels. So at first we think, it's that I can't remember his name, but he's a great actor. He's the old guy that runs the hotel.
Ian McShane. Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome. And you think that he's like the head honcho, the big man. But then they have this girl who is the high table representative, and her performance is unreal. It's just super cold, super corporate. Just here are the rules. If you don't follow them, you die. You can make your decision, but there will be something that happens accordingly.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And then to also focus more within the action, all the mistakes that can be made. Like one specific scene we were talking about, I think when we were discussing it on a transmission, was when they're throwing the knives,
yeah.
and like most movies, they have it. It's like stick him in. That's just how it goes because he's such an assassin. But with this one, there's so much chaos that it's constantly showing like the butt of the knife hit the guy in the head, and so it kind of causes this really. There's more chaos and less precision in this movie. It's a lot more like John Wick is like being thrown into these glass statues. There's this great one shot down like this hall where there's all these glass statues, and in one shot he just gets pushed into like 8 of them.
Yeah.
And there's just I found this one to be a lot more chaotic, and he wasn't able to be as precise as he is in the other ones. He's fighting more people this time around. And we just get more of a look at the system, like how at a certain time, when he's I can't remember the term. It's when you get kicked out of the whole system. But, and it's like right at 12, they're all looking at the clock, and then boom, John Wick, $14 million. Everybody's getting cell phone text, and they're all looking for him, and I just loved it. So although I did want it to end, they're so good. I believe in them at this point.
Yeah.
I think that they can do it. But I do hope that they have some idea of a final statement or episode or whatever it is, just because I don't want them to get tired, because I really love these movies. And, if they just start to pull them because of the cash, then I think it's going to get more obvious.
Yeah, for me, because again, this is as like impeccably made as the other ones are, and the way that they take it into the realm of kind of like the hyper violent like Indonesian martial arts films in this one and stuff like that.
Yeah, they get some stars that I recognize from like the Triple Threat movies and stuff like that. It's great.
Yeah, like just like the craft is still there. It's very strong. But I remember watching 2, and the thing that really stood out to me about 2 was that you know, like in the first one, I really liked the first one, but I remember personally I found the simplistic revenge plot like not quite as interesting as what they do in 2, which was like a really stylish deconstruction of John's craft, of him, which, I mean, you have these amazing craftsmen making a movie about another guy's craft, but his craft of killing people, where he's it's really exciting, he's really good at it, but it's just constantly undermined in number 2 by the realization that he is destroying his own body and soul by doing it in the way that he goes into that final sequence where it's reflections of the soul and he's gunning people down and getting blood all over the mirrors and the neon lights covering him and stuff like that.
And I do
to me that was like real sad boy action cinema stuff. And chapter 3 is doing similar things.
Yeah, but he still does take a toll. Like, he sacrifices, like, he cuts off his finger.
Yeah.
He gets branded in the back so he can continue this odyssey.
But yeah, it's just funny because the way that they've constructed is that now they have to figure out how to kind of keep going. When the whole thing is that he's trying to get out, and you can feel that the filmmakers aren't trying to get him out anymore. Like, they're trying to find ways to keep him in and to keep this going.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
So, like, that was the one thing that held it back.
I think that actually might be an interesting... If they can kind of correlate that to the next one, where it's almost like, I don't know, even the franchise itself is keeping John Wick alive and he just wants to die. Like, it's like at the end he could like look to us and just be like, it's you. And shoot us.
It's also worth noting that 3 has Lawrence Fishburne yelling, "Sometimes you gotta cut a motherfucker."
He is electric in this. He's like, because he's really good in the other ones. I don't think he's in the first one.
He's only in 2, right? Yeah.
Because he's really good in the second one, but this one, it seems like he was able to be a little more animated.
He has less screen time in the third one, but they give him crazier lines.
Yeah,
the lines they make every scene he's in count in the third one.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. So yeah, that'll be my number 6.
Number 6. All right. My number 5. Hey, I'll be able to go through this one a little bit faster because it's Parasite.
Oh, nice.
Because Jamie already said it, and I basically agree with most of what Jamie said. I think that it was directed by South Korean filmmaker Bong Joon-ho, who obviously did some of the best South Korean films of recent memory, including The Host, Mother, my personal favorite, Memories of Murder, which is just one of the just all-time best detectives obsessing over a serial killer case and having to wrestle with the reality that they might not ever solve it and that, you know, it's messier. Parasite, unlike Memories of Murder, is a little bit slicker. It's a little bit more... you can feel the gears of it going a little bit. It's very masterfully constructed, but the way that I described it was that it was kind of, when we were doing the bonus transmission, that it was kind of like a screenwriter's film where it was like there's all these interlocking pieces introduced and you kind of watch him hit each one like a Rube Goldberg machine, where it's like the ball comes down and then it knocks over the domino, which knocks over the tower, which things, like you feel the way that he's constructed it in all these kind of like clever, manufactured, kind of like shiny surface level ways. But I do think that it kind of works for the movie because it's in part about how the shiny surfaces of like the sort of like financial and capital accumulation distracts us from the horrifying conditions that exist in order to sustain that system. So, you know, a lot of the time these poor people have to be cleverer to survive in these poorer communities and to sort of climb their way up the ranks. But the only thing that they can imagine is climbing their way up the ranks. They're not imagining changing the system or finding another way, or they're imagining themselves becoming the next rich family, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of a lot of the tension of the film, is them slowly, parasitically entering the home, and then when they go out and they think that they own the place and they're like, this is our house, it's so beautiful, and then they're immediately, when the family gets home, they're like, holy shit, it's not our house. And there's like this half-hour long suspense sequence where then they go down into the basement and there's the subterranean horror aspect to it. And again, the way that it just fuels itself and it changes from family drama to heist movie to satirical farce to subterranean horror, all about the perverse and mutating relationship of unequal and transactional class relationships that these poor people have with the rich family. And that's how they get jobs. That's how they get success. And just the way that, you know, they can't, no matter how hard they try, they can't cross that boundary. They can't get that far. And the way that dad, when he's looking at, like, you know, the carnage, which we won't spoil, of the final situation, and all that dad is thinking about is the smell of poor people when he covers his nose because he's he smells Subway, or he smells like, you know, like people who have to take public transportation and stuff. And that really kind of like sets them off. So, but either way, it feels like Bong Joon-ho is getting at the fact that, you know, the seams of the current capitalist system in South Korea are like ripping. And he's made a film about watching them rip, about watching, you know, these characters who have to suffer these precarities and indignities and anxieties, and is asking, how could you possibly not think that this was going to have a violent reaction or a violent destination? And the way that the characters have to live with that. And again, the way that it works also as a family drama is still compelling too. So it's it's got a thematic depth to it, and it's got and very, very well constructed. It's not quite my favorite Bong Joon-ho film, but like if this is even your second or third best film, it's like you're a pretty damn good fucking filmmaker. But you're number 5.
My number 5. I'm hoping this counts. I'm almost certain that it does, but you can let me know if I fucked up. Uncut Gems.
I counted it.
Good, because it's here.
The way that I said it, it's a crime.
That's what as I was watching it, I was feeling like I have not seen something like it, but we've watched movies on the show where it's kind of just showing somebody in a scene and just aggressively self-destructing, you know? And then, you have plenty of, like, mobster ties and stuff like that. So I felt like it definitely counted. Adam Sandler, man, he's been killing it these past couple of years. Like, his comedy, his stand-up comedy that he did last year was phenomenal. Yeah. And then he comes out with this year, and he is a powerhouse. I had no idea that he was capable of this, because I haven't seen... The what is it called? The Merowitz Story?
Merowitz Stories, yeah.
I haven't seen that yet.
Punch Drunk Love. Have you seen Punch
I have seen that, yes. And he is very impressive in that film. But there's something about this where he's playing like such a... I'm used to his more angry, kind of a dumb guy vibe, you know? And with this, he's very... he's calculated in a very chaotic way. But he has steps that he wants to take. I get overwhelmed. This movie gives me so much anxiety, I can't even believe it. Yeah. Because just seeing him go from scene to scene, like, you know, he gets, you know, 20 grand or whatever for something, and you're like, okay, this guy's solid. Like, he's got 20 grand, that's some good security money, you know, he'll be fine. What does he do? Takes the 20 grand right away, goes to like a pawn shop, you know, like... trades in something else, and he's like, "Oh, I'll get it back to you in a week."
Places
then takes that, goes back to some other place, makes a deal with them, and you're like, "Dude, you've just spent 4 different people's money hoping that you get it back, and you gain profit, and that you can give it all back to these people who are most likely capable of killing you if you don't." Yeah, you know. So it's just like you're constantly watching this man just self-destruct and make bad decisions, but it's also so thrilling, and because you know the consequences, you want him to succeed, even though what he's doing is like bad. Like, it's not a good thing. It's not a good trait to have.
He's a likable guy.
No, he's not. He's not a likable guy, but you want him to succeed because his success connects to his family. It connects to the girl that he's dating, you know, and you don't want them to go through all the hell. Mm-hmm. So in order for that to happen, this asshole has to succeed with whatever he's trying to accomplish. And so you get this really kind of weird thing inside where you don't know what you want to feel about him, you know? And then there's that great scene where he breaks down the whole character, and where he's in front of his wife. And it's like the one scene where he can't really convince how smooth he is through his words. And he's like, come on, give me a chance, right? And she just looks at him with like, just complete disgust.
Played by
like,
Idina Menzel.
Yeah, fantastic performance by her too. Everybody. Also, Julia Fox. Oh, my God. She's so talented too. Like that scene with... you were talking about it where she gets the ass tattoo. Oh yeah. And like she's like super enthusiastic. Then you have Adam Sandler doing that one thing, you can't even get buried next to me now or something like that. Yeah. Oh man. And certain things didn't
because that's a very Jewish detail.
Right, because I didn't know certain things, and when you were telling me about certain jokes, it made it even better. There's just a ton of great detail to the film, and it's a non-stop like anxiety ridden attack on the senses for sure.
Yeah, the soundscape and stuff with like there's constantly like 10 people talking over each other all the time. Yeah. So the fact that you can hear anyone in this movie is kind of insane.
It's insane. And I won't spoil anything because the ending is unreal good. Yeah. And
I saw it in a theater
yeah.
twice, and both times I've seen it in a theater, audible gasps at
Yeah.
the end of the film.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we don't want to spoil.
And I
that
also
for you
can't
guys.
wait to see what Julia Fox does, because she's blowing up now. Everyone's fucking talking about her. At least what I've seen on like film Twitter and stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she does, because that was her breakout role, right?
Yep, first movie.
Nuts, crazy.
Yeah, and if you felt like I wasn't jumping in too much there, that's because we're gonna hit it up.
Yeah, I figured
a little bit higher here in a moment.
I'm like, I know
So
you got things to say.
So we'll be back. We'll be right back. So that was your number 5?
Yeah,
So my number
five.
4 is a little bit of a cheat, because most people will consider this a television show, but Too Old to Die Young.
You're doing it.
Nicholas Winding Refn. He directed all 10 episodes. It's fucking 13 hours long.
That's insanity.
But I had to do it.
You showed me like 10 minutes of it today, and I'm so convinced to watch it. It's unreal.
Yeah, it might honestly be my favorite thing that he's made.
Yeah. Wow.
Watching it now. And
Shit.
I've liked a lot of the stuff that
I definitely got to watch it. Like, I love Drive. Like, fucking 5 Drive. I just
But if
love
you
it to
like
death.
Nick Winding Refn, you like his neon lit brooding, you love the
Cliff
slow
Martinez
zams, pans,
on
the
those
Cliff Martinez
synths, baby.
score, the like philosophical like wankery and bursts of like repulsive fetish violence and all of that stuff. If you like all that and you want to see what it was like if he experimented by making it 13 fucking hours long, denying all rules of like television. Like, again, the reason I'm going to do this is just because like the episodes are not clearly delineated at all.
Yeah.
Like there's no
I
episodic
think I might
structure to this really.
understand the whole argument once I see it.
Yeah, like it feels designed to watch in a single sitting, even if it's not like it
Even if
can't
you're
be.
not capable of it, yeah.
Yeah, like it doesn't feel like he came at it from I'm gonna write this episode and then this episode. It feels like he just wrote one long script and then kind of like split it up from there. So the length is unbearable and it's very abstract and stylish, and again, all of the bleeding lights and the electronic droning and stuff, the way that he's accumulated it all here into like this really pulp story of a sort of crime procedural that is more about like Miles Teller like wrestling with like the collapse of American society and like what that means for this cop who's also dating an underage girl whose father is a porn producer. And he's also hunting down a pedophile ring, but he's technically a pedophile, but he's hunting down pedophile rings.
Yeah.
So you're sitting here and you're like,
Just like, how old is the daughter? How far do they go?
she's 16 and like just turned 16.
Okay,
And he's
yeah.
like 30 or something.
Jesus. Fucking reffing, man.
So like he intentionally hammers that home, that the contradiction of like the lawlessness and also the repulsiveness of the law at the same time, and he's hitting all of this stuff, but he's done it again in this kind of like ghostly, like really repulsive overall style, shot by experimental film cinematographer Diego Garcia for all the Mexican cartel stuff, because it's also mixed up in a Mexican cartel family drama. Which is its own subplot entirely.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff is all shot by Darius Kanji, who also shot Uncut Gems.
Oh, hell yeah.
And again, this is all just so crazy, and a lot of people compared it to Twin Peaks The Return. David Lynch obviously sustaining his vision for 20 hours or however many hours it was for Twin Peaks The Return,
Right.
but it's Nick Winding Refn doing that. And it's just this apocalyptic odyssey of like just perversity and depravity and kind of how we've built societal structures over top of them in hopes of covering them up, but they're always bleeding in, and there's so much gross stuff that happens in this show. I can't even describe it all to you because again, it's 13 hours. But one thing that has to be pointed out is that I was skeptical of the show when I was watching the first couple episodes, because I have no idea what Winding Refn was trying to say about, like, he enters the realm of like political satire with the cops. Like, he has the cops like doing this thing that they're like they write like something like fascism is goodism on like the wall in the police station and stuff. Like, it's so absurd and like cartoonish.
Yeah,
and I had no idea.
I laugh my ass off when I see that.
I have
That's so
no
funny.
idea what Winding Refn was like really going for there.
Fascism is goodism.
But the way that he holds it, and you feel that he thinks it means something to the point where
Yeah.
it actually ends up working. And I showed you the Mandy sequence,
Yeah,
which is
loved
where
it.
Miles Teller has like hunted killed down this like leader of a pedophile ring, and he's getting chased across a highway by the two henchmen, and you know nothing about these two henchmen. You don't like, you know nothing about their emotional lives, and they're chasing him down. And the way that he's filmed the chase scene is a crossfade superimposed neon montage to Barry Manilow's Mandy, where they are mourning the loss of this pedophile.
Their pedophile friend.
And there's Miles Teller, whose lit neon red face has a single tear dropping down, and the tear is the white lines on the road, because it's crossfading the road with his face.
This is some deep macho shit right here.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, the way that he takes cues from neo-noir and westerns and brief and like detours into these moving and surreal sequences just like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Really, really powerful. And by the time I hit like 7 or 8 hours in, I was like, I think this is the best thing I've ever seen. I was like, even though I still can't say exactly what it's all about, I was completely mesmerized by it. And
I'm
Billy
definitely
Baldwin
watching
plays
this.
the porn producer dad too, and he's just constantly doing like coke sniffs, like even when he's not, he's like just all the time. God, just what a fucking show, I gotta say.
Dude, that's unreal.
So give it a check out, because Nick Winding
absolutely
Refn
will.
says that he was inspired by I guess he said that he was inspired by the Trump stuff, but mostly just because he liked the idea of, because he liked the idea of like, it's like America mask off shit,
Yeah.
basically was how he saw it. And he made like a pulp crime show, like his own version of like a moody Death Wish type thing.
Yeah.
But mask off, like full surreal cartoony shit.
Oh, man. I'm definitely watching that.
So-
Honestly, the 5 minutes you showed me was like, I'll watch all 13 hours of this shit. There's
Yeah.
no way I won't.
So that's my number 4.
Nice. My number 4 is Midsummer.
Oh,
I ended up loving this movie.
Good movie.
It's basically like an extra hour.
I was really
of the
sad I
Wicker
couldn't
Man.
put it on.
Yeah, it's like the Wicker Man, but with an extra hour of detail, and I just love it. I absolutely enjoyed the character of what's his name? It's I think the actor's name is Jack. He's the guy that's also in Sing Street. He plays the older brother.
Christian, he plays in the movie.
Okay, Christian. Watching his character, who was at first just kind of a piece of shit, like just kind of a bad boyfriend, not the best friend, but still someone that you maybe could have a beer with.
Not very
you know?
present in the relationship. Doesn't want to be in it.
No, and I love the writing in this because it is so perfect when it comes to showing these little white lies that you're doing within the relationship. Like when he's talking to his friends, for instance, at the beginning, telling them they're talking about the Sweden trip.
Yeah.
And then she goes, "Oh, you're going to the Sweden trip? I
Yeah.
thought you weren't going to it." And he's just like, "Oh, well, no, I'm not totally decided yet." And then she's like, "But you just told me that you guys bought the ticket." And he's, well, yeah, but it's still up in the air. We're not totally sure. And all his friends are right there going, well, we know you're going.
Yeah.
But we have to stay silent because we don't want to cause shit between your girlfriend. And that whole vibe is it just amplifies as the film goes until the point where it's a direct connection with the actual cult stuff that's going on.
Right.
And then you have
because
her,
the cult doesn't. The idea of the cult is that they are exactly what they are on the surface. They don't
Right.
pretend that stuff.
No,
even if
they reveal the murder aspect of their rituals within the first 30 minutes of them being there.
Yeah,
basically.
and out in the open and saying this is just honest.
Yeah, and it's like, if you want to leave at this point, fine, but this is what we do, and you have to accept it if you're going to be here. And then because they're doing a theory for their university degree, they choose to stay and dive deeper into the culture and all that, and
Yeah.
unfortunately that pretty much ends with a lot of their demise. But it's I think watching her go from this really lonely, miserable state, transforming into something where she feels like she has a family now, but it's all based on the sacrifice of her boyfriend, the sacrifice of her friends, and just kind of her accepting belonging in this crazy cult because they've essentially propped her up and said you're the queen, you can belong here, you can connect here, and there's nothing left for you back in America. So and then that fucking shot of her almost as if she's become like this creature
flower
of nature.
slug.
Yeah. and the burning pyramid or
Crossfade with her face.
Oh my god, it's unbelievable, and it's really impactful. And then also just small thoughts like the belief that these cultists had within their rituals and things like that. Like, for instance, if you drink this, you'll feel no pain when you're burned, and the last thing that you see when they set fire to the building
is that he fucking
he's screaming, like he feels it all, but he believed it until that point.
Which is like the way that it's shot. It's like a joke, but it's like a really horrifying joke.
Yes, exactly. And I also just love the attention to detail that he does with the cult. Like with the Wicker Man, they don't go too far into it. They leave it more mysterious. Whereas this one is like they have books
the
upon
rituals,
their history, and they have a whole like walls of images.
I was going to say, have you watched the director's cut? Because I haven't watched it yet. Apparently,
I've
there's an
only seen
extra
the
half
theater.
hour, and the extra half hour
Holy
is supposed to be like just more of the ritual cult stuff. Apparently,
wow. No, I only watched it the one time in the theaters.
Yeah, that's all I've watched it. Too.
But I'm definitely checking that out. That sounds awesome. And also, just to wrap this up, the thoughts of Midsummer, to watch the movie, the ending, and then have, you know, like we said earlier, a couple basically break up in front of you because of just this constant these thoughts on relationships and how maybe
because
the girl looks at it.
He got up during the credits and said, "I don't know that he deserved that." And
Which
the girl,
he's right, by the way.
The girl who was because the movie walks that line of like clearly this is a cathartic relief for her.
Yes.
But clearly it is also horror.
Horror, yeah,
yes.
exactly.
So like
You're not supposed to just be like, well, he cheated on her, so of course he should be burned in a fucking
right. And also it's worth acknowledging too that what she thinks is cheating was actually him being raped too.
exactly.
Drugged and put and forced into it.
Right. Exactly.
So he Ari Aster intentionally has that contradiction be the end of the film, and it's really brilliant the way that clearly men felt very like, I would like not to be killed that way, and women were like, I completely understand why she felt that way. So
and then to watch
Smash.
it right after we see the movie directly to our right, like a personified version of it was just Oh man, that was great.
She said, "That's rich coming from you of all people," was what she said.
So I think there's a little bit of a pass there.
And they silently walked out of that.
It was the cherry on top to an already amazing film, and it connected so well with the experience that we just watched. I was like, that was destiny right there.
Yes.
So yeah,
I totally agree. I
4.
wish I could have fit it on the list. I would have. It probably honestly would have been number 11, or like I could have even done another top 10 tie there.
Yeah.
Because again, the way that it takes that folk horror stuff to it, but combines it with like modern relationship stuff, and how one exacerbates the other one basically, and the tension is always there between the two.
Also love how they use the psychedelics to create like how the nature is breathing. Like there's shots where the mountains look like they're actually pulsating and like their lungs. It's great.
And the way that it's technically about like cutting toxic people out of your life is kind of like the way that she feels about it. And I think when we did the bonus transmission, I think I said something along the lines of, it all comes down to that the Scandinavian murder cult was more emotionally available than the boyfriend was, is all it was.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
And some of the gross, like the horror imagery, like was almost ripped straight from Hannibal, like that angel that wings that are being pulled apart and stuff like that. And again, the emotional self-actualization through just this gorgeous, violent extremity is just, I found like, and the way that he makes it emotionally effective while still showing you horror imagery is just, it's really powerful. And again, the way we've talked about it a lot, but like Ari Aster, he's so farcically cruel in his movies.
Yeah, that there's almost a humor
fucking scares
to it.
me sometimes.
Yeah, for real. I'm like, what's going on, bro? Talk to somebody.
Yeah, man. He's just the way that
keep making your movies though.
Because when he talks about his movies, he's always talking about them as like art dramas and stuff. And I'm like, dude, if you think that that's like an art drama, what's a horror movie to you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, has he actually made a horror movie in his mind yet?
Yes. So I think that he's just an incredibly vivid, idiosyncratic filmmaker right now.
Yeah.
And even though, his camera moves are very controlled and he's pulling from like this history of art film and stuff like that, like his actual subject matter is disgusting.
Yep.
And I find that
Love
the
that.
contradiction between like this beautiful, very calm style that he has,
Yep.
and his slow camera moves and everything, and what he actually writes about,
Yeah.
is completely unhinged. And I just find that contradiction like really, really awesome to watch. So I'm glad Jamie put
I
it on his
agree.
list.
I agree.
And that was your number 3? 4?
Yeah. So we're on
3 for me. Uncut Gems, baby.
Nice.
Directed, obviously, written and directed by the Safdie brothers. Obviously, they did Good Time. They did Daddy Longlegs about their dad, and they did Heaven Knows What, the poverty, the sort of junky neon drama there about the kids living on the streets and stuff. Nice. Uncut Gems is like probably their biggest, most expensive film.
Is this your favorite now, do you think? Hard to say?
I go back and forth between this and Good Time. I feel
Yeah,
like
Good Time's
I
so
feel like
good.
whichever one I watch
Most recently
is
Yeah.
probably the one I like the most. And to be fair, I've watched Uncut Gems 3 times since TIFF. I saw
Nice.
it at TIFF. I watched it, and then I took the girlfriend and her parents to go and see it in theaters as well. And now we're going to play it at the movie theater at our theater here in town.
Yeah,
So I'm probably going to watch it again.
stoked. Oh my god.
But I did a lot of research because I actually reviewed this film at TIFF, and I watched a lot of the Safdie brothers stuff, and I just love that in all of their films they have 2 contradictory things going at the same time, which is one, their father, total hustler.
Yeah.
And one of the brothers really loves the father and kind of forgives him for a lot of the stuff, that damage they caused their family. And the other brother is a lot more upset with him.
Oh, so you can kind of get that within like.
Well, in the documentary on the Criterion Channel that they have, where they introducing Josh and Benny Safdie or whatever, they interview them individually,
Yeah.
and you can see them like talking about each other. He's like, yeah, he really likes him and wants to talk to him, and like, I'm now a dad, and I see the way that my dad treated me, and I don't want him in like as part of my life. And,
Yeah.
So this movie is based on stories that their dad told them while he was working in the Diamond District, exactly where Adam Sandler's working.
Okay.
And they clearly have an affection for the art and craft of hustling, the
Yeah.
process of manipulation and social coercion to like get your way, and the skill that it takes. The same way, kind of like in Parasite, like it takes a skill
Yeah.
that you have to learn. You're constantly a salesman. You're constantly trying
It's
to manipulate your
exhausting.
surroundings. Yeah,
Like
and then,
I couldn't do it. There's no way. It's
so
just-
so they capture the skill of how exhausting and claustrophobic it is.
Yeah.
And then also the inherent like pain of it, the way that you treat people like transactional interactions, and the sadness and the rippling consequences, sometimes the physical harm of it, like the way that you manipulate other people and you stop pretending, or you basically ignore the fact that there are real people that you're
Yeah.
fucking with all the time. And Adam Sandler does that all the time, where he's pulling money, pulling stuff. And like, we don't know, like when he loses like $100,000 or something like that, loses someone's object, you're like, he's probably another Adam Sandler character who probably needed that to like make his own deal. So
Yeah.
you're sitting there going, like, he's just screwing up everyone's life around him. And
Yeah.
he's skilled at what he does, but you can tell that he's been doing it for like decades.
Yeah.
And that the seams are ripping, that he's,
Yeah.
you know, he's there's something older and wearier about this than in Good Time. Good Time is like him, Robert Pattinson, like very thornily abusing everyone in his vicinity to get his brother out of jail.
Yeah.
But it's very clear that it's a young man's film.
Yes.
Adam Sandler here, there's something wearier, there's something more. Clearly, he's been doing this for a
Yeah,
long
you
time.
can feel the decades of experience within his character.
Yeah, and Adam Sandler, just a total whirlwind of like concentrated like compulsion, and the way that he like, you know, I could watch him for hours like run around yelling and sweating around New York inside like music venues and cabs in his like Gucci loafers and
For
his
real.
hilarious
I could
outfits.
watch a 4-hour version of this 100%.
It's just so much fun. And there's no better indication of his craft than that one scene that you mentioned too, where he negotiates with Garnett that he'll let him take the stone, Kevin Garnett,
Right.
the basketball player. He'll let him take the stone, the uncut gem, if he'll give him his 2008 championship ring. He immediately takes that ring to the pawn shop, puts it down for collateral so he can get the money, so he can use that money to bet on the basketball game that Kevin Garnett's about to play.
Yeah.
Because he's going to feel lucky holding the stone and all of this. And
Yeah.
I love the line he has, "This man's feeling the gem," is what he says, yelling at the screen.
Dude, and I love that the movie doesn't have any sit down time where he's like planning it out. It's
No.
literally like he
He's
gets
constantly
the thing
on his
and then he
feet,
goes
spinning
boom.
plates.
Yeah, like it's like he didn't even have to think about it. It really
Yeah.
was a natural thing. He's like, okay, well now I have this thing worth about $50,000. Well, I'll go pawn that, and it's it just gives me so much anxiety because I am such a, like, before I make any decision, I like think about it for a decent amount of time and make sure that's what I want. And it seems like he lives entirely on impulse.
Yeah, he's exasperated like all of the time, sweating and scheming, and like he's seconds away from a crushing failure every fucking second.
Time, yeah.
And the way that they've shot it is kind of like as a Cassavetes film. I don't know if you've seen much of old John Cassavetes stuff that he like directed, but a lot of people have mentioned this is sort of similar to his film The Killing of a Chinese Bookie. But he was very famous because he did these very like intense kind of like close-up scenes of people in rooms.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like an actor showcase where these people would really like get into each other and stuff like that. So like they've shot this film in a very similar style. Like there's not a lot of wide shots. It's a lot of like very intense close-ups.
I heard a lot of the
people.
time too, it was Adam Sandler and the actor, and the camera would be actually very far away,
on
but
a
they
telephoto
do the
lens.
close-ups.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it was like Adam I think was mentioning it in a
sometimes he wouldn't know when they were rolling.
He was talking with Brad Pitt, I think,
Yeah.
on some actor thing, and he was mentioning that it started to feel like, you know, since he couldn't see the cameras and the people, that he could just kind of like throw himself into the scene that much easier. And that's just an interesting thought, I think, to like, it's almost like, what is it called? It's like guerrilla camera work or whatever in a way. Yeah, it was.
Where you
like
wouldn't know that the camera was there, that they were just kind of filming it on the street. And,
it was that was interesting to me.
Yeah, and I just find that there's a real sense of melancholy to the overall film with Adam Sandler's character, who is kind of like panicked insecurity and determination. Like it really draws in your sympathy because you want to see him succeed, even if, you know, you can tell that he's making bad decisions and maybe he's not the best dad.
Yeah.
And clearly he's a very careless person who is putting people in danger, like that bit where he gets all the money and you're like, dude, you've done it, you can do it, but he's got to place another bet. He's got to keep it going.
There's so many moments where you're just like, you did it, and then you come on, just stop.
Yes. And the way that it's wrapped into a larger ethnic detail of the film, where the Safdie brothers, obviously very, very Jewish guys, Adam Sandler grew up like working at a lot of these like Jewish community centers and stuff like that, and the way that they've infused the Jewishness into the film, it was really awesome taking my girlfriend's family to see it. And like all the bits where it was like Jews and colon cancer, what's with that kind of stuff. But specifically also when I ended up talking about the film at dinner with her parents afterward, and they were telling stories about like gambling addict uncles and stuff like that who like lost the houses, and a lot of the experience of like first generation Jewish immigrants into these places. Obviously, you know, they would have been put into places like the Diamond District. They would have been sometimes they would have been entering criminal lives. Her dad was talking about like knowing dudes who joined like the mob and got into selling drugs in New York and got into like flying those planes to Colombia and stuff like that. They were like naturally there's something sort of desperate and precarious about that Jewish immigrant experience that Adam Sandler just you feel that in the film, where he's just like he's constantly feeling like, you know, what makes him good at what he does is this exasperated skill, this desire to succeed, to get ahead, because he has to. He you know, he's naturally behind because of the experiences of his people, so he has to like be better. He has to like outwit people. He has to do this, and then that pushes him also to his downfall at the same time.
And I find it interesting that he's only doing this for himself too. Yeah, you know, like it most of the time, if there's like some type of real addiction or like in this sense, I mean, you almost feel like they're doing it so that they can, I don't know, get the respect of their family with the money or just something like that. But this seems like the whole time it's just a game to him, you know, like it's just what thrills him. It's what makes him feel alive, basically. Yeah. And I find that very interesting because there's no stopping him at that point then, you know, like if it's just for him, then that's it.
Well, yeah, and it's been ingrained into him because it has to be. That's how he has to. Same way with Parasite, the way that the poor people have to survive. They have to adapt these skills in order to do that. He has to do the same thing.
It is interesting though, him instead of like just like with Parasite, right? It's like the poor family just trying to get a normal job. Yeah. This time he's dealing with like hundreds of thousands of dollars and just tossing it away.
Well, that also gets you into the industry of that, because it's also obviously a little bit of critique of the jewelry industry and the way, I mean, it opens in Ethiopia where they are exploiting like poor African workers and their bodies in order to just mine this stuff. And even Kevin Garnett says you were going to pay yourself 10 times what you paid them for it and stuff like that. Like they talk about like this idea of, again, shiny surfaces and then like the real bodily consequences of it, which obviously that also involves the opening where it goes into the shiny cosmicness of the gem and then into his own body. Like again,
that shit was crazy.
Communicating directly the shiny surfaces into the fleshy people who make it run. And like again,
the sequence was nuts.
The Safdie brothers, I think, are just legitimate geniuses. And this is just
I can't wait to see where their careers go.
An amazing film. And again, the way that they clearly have affection for their father, but they're also very aware that like he hurt their family and walk that line all the time of sort of like affection and abuse all the time. And it's so dramatic and claustrophobic and hard to watch half the time.
Sure.
So I can understand if anyone is maybe turned off by that, but it's totally
that's
thrilling.
The thing. You are going to feel some anxiety while watching this movie, but it's all worth it. And what an explosive finale too.
Totally.
So,
your number 3.
my number 3 is High Life. This movie is very dark. But the thing is that I feel like it's more hopeful and less nihilistic than it at first presents itself to be, because you have first they open up with like a good 20-25 minutes of like just
Robert Pattinson
and
on a
daughter.
spaceship with a baby.
Right, and it's adorable. Like you do feel his right away. We have something where it's like the baby obviously stops him from doing certain things. Like when she starts crying or screams and kind of freaks him out, he drops one of the essential tools into deep space, and he's never gonna have that fucking thing again.
Yeah.
So it right away shows that although that he obviously loves his daughter, within this environment, it's very difficult to have the normal daughter-father relationship, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I like that they set it up that way and then show you like the middle stuff where it's like the actual interactions.
There's like these
humans.
elliptical flashbacks that come through of like how it ended up that there is Robert Pattinson and a baby alone maintaining a spaceship going into deep space.
Right.
So how did we get here?
And this the idea of like the reproduction of human beings and
in
whether
space.
or not and whether or not like some characters are basically just like it's not worth it at this point, like what we're gonna bring, and that is the nihilistic part of the film. I would say it's just kind of like there's characters that just believe that it's hopeless.
Well, some believe it's not worth it, but then also there's the idea is it possible, because they talk about the idea of like the radiation poisoning the babies in space or something like that they can't live without like the natural organic environment or something like that.
Right, and I think by the end of the film, it's essentially saying like I think even if we all end up in a black hole and we don't know what's on the other side, I think the effort put forth to continue loving, to continue believing in something,
the rituals,
it's
human rituals.
There's something there that has meaning itself, and that I think can kind of destroy the nihilism. Because that's the thing. At the end of the day,
because if it doesn't, what the fuck are we doing?
Exactly. Like they'd have no motivation to do anything. And I know that may be kind of a cop out where it's like, well, maybe that is nihilism. It's like if I can say that there wasn't anything to believe in at that point except just believing in something, then maybe that is nihilism. But I don't know. I think that humans are that we're constantly trying to find some type of meaning even in the most dire circumstances, and this film shows the most like horrible circumstances. So,
I mean, we were just talking about Uncut Gems being a tough sit. This is a tougher sit.
I think so too. Especially when we get to like the sexual frustrations with one specific male.
All of the rapes.
And they're very brutal. Like
I don't think there's a single act of like actual sex in the film. I think it's all basically rape for the most part.
It is. Even the one that's and that what's interesting, this is the big thing that I noticed the second time watching it, was the first one where it shows the guy sexually assaulting the girl, and it's just such a brutally violent scene. Like he punches two of them that are screaming for the other guys to help, and he really punches them. Like it is a whole
brutal.
hard beating.
No, she's tackling sexual violence in society.
But then I like that the next scene, essentially, I think there might be like a 5-minute thing, but basically the next scene is when Robert Pattinson gets raped
while he's been knocked out.
Right, and his is like, because the girl is motivated by wanting the human race to continue and
science or
everything,
whatever, yeah.
she does it in this like loving way.
Right.
So you feel gross because you're like, I'm watching a rape, but she's doing it with like actual compassion.
Like
and
she
it's
thinks
so,
she is anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. I'm not saying there is.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is just it's interesting to have that scene and then have that scene.
Yes, they're very stylistically and tonally like different
Right.
sequences for sure.
And yeah, Claire, I gotta check more of her movies
Claire
out.
Denis,
Like
she's
I've
phenomenal.
seen these. I've watch listed a bunch, and it seems like she goes to some.
You would love
places in
her
all of them.
vampire movie, I think.
What's that called?
Trouble Every Day.
Yeah, I think is that the one where you literally reviewed it with just like a teeth bearing emoji where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that was some shit right there, man.
Yeah, if you ever wanted to know what sexual violence, including like eating women out, would look like, but with vampires.
Oh fuck. Oh my god. Yeah,
Yep.
she's out there, and I appreciate her.
And then she also did a really gruesome neo-noir called Bastards, which also involves like sex trafficking rings and stuff too. So
Dang. So she dives into the sexual stuff quite
she's
a bit.
pretty
Huh?
sexual violence is like a thing that's like very interesting to her as a
Yeah.
filmmaker. And
Sure.
I'm gonna just jump right in with you because my number 2 is High Life.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm going to join right in here.
That
Yeah.
works well.
Again, directed by French filmmaker Claire Denis. It's drawn all kinds of comparisons to like 60s and 70s cerebral sci-fi films like 2001
Yeah,
and
'cause it's
Solaris. It's
very
kind of like
basic,
lo-fi,
right? Yeah.
minimalist kind of sci-fi
Sure.
filmmaking.
It's not like that hyper tech or anything like that. It's
No, it's clearly limited
like an Alien
by
movie.
the budget because like she can't render space very much. Like it's kind of clearly just a black room that like she
Yeah.
just kind of like throws bodies in. Like they don't do the floating bodies in space. They do like the thing where they just fall and
Yeah.
it's completely silent.
I love though how they like kind of fall extremely slowly,
Yeah.
and that's when the title card pops up.
High
It's
Life.
like him. I was like, oh shit, this is how you're gonna open up your film.
Yeah, and again,
it's 20 minutes into the film too.
The class-based reality of it where they're sending where they're like Earth is dying, what do we do?
Send the criminals.
Let's just fuck around with criminals, I guess, and see what happens. So
Yeah.
they take these kids, some of whom were just like homeless people who were thrown in jail,
Yeah.
and then they send them into space to both perform sexual experiments on them and try to reproduce, see if they can reproduce in space to continue the human race. And then also the other plan is send them around a black hole and see if they can harness its rotating energy or if they can get through it or what happens like around a black hole. So sort of similar to Interstellar in that way, but like a really art house, really gruesome Interstellar.
Yeah, like that sequence. Like it's interesting you just said that because in Interstellar they have that warp hole sequence
Yeah.
where they start to stretch and stuff.
Yeah.
And in this one they do the same thing, but they're like, but the body itself is also being distorted on a physical level. It's
Exactly,
not like it's
exactly.
not like it adapts. It's your bones are being stretched to the point where the fucking blood just splatters into the mask, and
yeah.
you're like,
yeah, and,
oh my
and
god.
the VFX supervisor for that sequence, the guy who did Twin Peaks. So,
Oh, hell yeah.
So if that felt to you at all like David Lynchian almost style
sure.
horror, that would be why.
Yeah, that was a devastating death. Like it's just so horrific to watch.
Yes. So again, just the way that she attacks like the mundanity of this kind of like the routines and the memories that they go through, like the sort of non-linear elliptical structure that they have where they're like recalling the 16 millimeter past life on Earth and then up in space where they're being, obviously they don't have bodily autonomy and like the horror, like it's a horror movie of not having control over your own body.
Yeah, there's no choice basically in this.
No,
at all.
they have to be constant. All the women are artificially inseminated. Pretty much most of the characters at some point are raped, and they're not even allowed to have like romantic relationships with each other. They're given,
and that's the thing.
They're given the fuck box.
That's the thing too. It's like
Which
it's
is like this
they
mystical
this doctor
pleasure
is
machine.
trying so hard to have more babies and stuff, but the love doesn't seem like she doesn't want that to be a thing, which is a very I don't necessarily know what her motivation for that would be, because also when she sexually assaults Pattinson, like it seems like she does have some love there. Now I think the love comes more from like she feels like this is the answer, like this is going to be the solution. So maybe that's where she's getting her excitement.
Well, she's
from.
definitely because she killed her children, I think was why she was there.
Okay, yeah.
And I think they suggest that she's in love with this idea of having like another
a second
baby.
chance in a sense. Yeah,
another
yeah,
baby
yeah.
that she's really emotionally attached to this idea of creating a baby in space, which is why she keeps trying even though it's not working, and all the people are obviously just getting frustrated with her because all they do all day are these monotonous like rituals where they like tend the garden or they like read books and hang out on the ship basically in between being like sexually assaulted basically. And meanwhile they are living this monotonous existence on the ship where at any day if they don't check in the life support will be shut off. Like if they're not constantly maintaining those rituals all the time. So the way that Denis like blurs the time and space kind of like between those timelines, like the electric humming and stuff that's constantly on the ship, and sometimes you'll hear it even in the 16mm flashbacks on Earth before it became unlivable and stuff like that. And then we got to say, again, the way that it gets to kind of like the ending of the film, and
that's what made me love the film.
And Robert Pattinson has basically just shown you all of these sort of like societal horrors of and how a parent could witness all of those things and be like, I'm going to bring a child into this world and I'm going to try and make that world better for them. And it's like what she details is the experience of like maybe the responsibility that parents have to endure that. That, you know, I mean, I don't have any kids. I don't know when I'm going to have kids or anything like that. But I watched the film and I really empathized with the idea of being a parent in that situation where Robert Pattinson
100%.
has this baby on the ship. And he's looking at it and it's so innocent, so beautiful. It's going to grow up. It's going to become something. He's trying to shape it into a better person even than him. Because he was just a homeless guy who like killed someone over a dog or something like that. And he's just like, she's looking to me like I'm the most important figure there is. And Earth by now has maybe even like completely destroyed hundreds of years ago. Who knows? She's watching like transmissions of them praying and stuff like that. And he doesn't want to like rip that away from her. Like this idea that like, you know, human
even
society
though she has like a lack
work.
of understanding of it.
Like yeah, she's watching like what might as well be sci-fi.
And
he's going, that religious stuff, like some of that basically led to our demise as an entire society and stuff like that. So it's just interesting that this seemingly futile gesture of raising a child during the last days, like of the apocalypse almost, and it really dramatizes that emotional journey.
I also love like the line. I think it might be the last line, where she just says like, "I believe in this one," and it's just kind of her going like, it's like he has had no hope throughout this whole fucking thing, and she is the only ounce of that, and for her to look at him and be like, "I believe in this one." This is, and because I don't think like he's even heard something hopeful like that in at least a couple decades. You know what I mean? So I even though it might have led to their demise, we don't really know. That's kind of the beauty of the ending. It doesn't really matter because I think, you know, at least there was hope and a belief in something at the end of it.
Right, that's just it, is that the movie doesn't give you any, like the movie itself doesn't like give you any evidential proof of hope.
But even if it's like they are dead or whatever.
But it shows a guy who has experienced all that misery and horror looking at someone who does and wanting to believe.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that's maybe enough that maybe his child won't have to experience and endure the same things that he did. And that's and hopefully he can shelter her from that if possible.
And I find that very beautiful. Like it's I remember saying it to you after the movie ended. I was like, I feel a lot more hopeful than I thought I was going to after watching the first hour and a half of the movie. You know what I mean? Because as I'm watching it, I'm like, this is the most nihilistic, just horrifying thing ever. And then at the end, I went, oh, that even that small thing has hope to it. And it actually kind of got me in a positive place, oddly enough.
Yeah, because until
horror.
that point, the movie is flagrantly like gross and cruel, and the way that it accesses like this biological horror of bodily autonomy and stuff like that. And again, the way that she sensually films the film, it's gross. Like there's bodily fluids all over this film. There's like scenes of semen and stuff in this film, and milk. And that one scene we talked about in the bonus transmission, where the one girl, her one thing that she has is that she feels in control of her body, and that she never gets pregnant because she's like, I will it that I will never get pregnant. And then she does, and you see the milk coming out of her, and she's looking at her own body betraying her, and it's so sad and so horrifying. Mia Goth is the character there, and she's really good in the film as well. So yeah, gotta say, Claire Denis did not have to go off as hard as she did.
Yeah, for real.
In this like really horrifying, like class-based, very heavily on the sexual violence like look at society, and I was like pretty blown away by it when I saw it at TIFF, and then I saw it again with you, and we played it at the theater, and I was like, man, every time I watch it, there's just a little bit more to pick up on. Yeah. So I'm glad finally we were able to recommend High Life out there, because I saw this, could have been on my list last year. But then I was like, I'm saving it until more people have seen it. So now, fucking, I hope you guys have seen it, or go out and see it. But
well, speaking
your
of
number 2,
the bodily functions and all that, The Lighthouse.
There you go.
Yeah, this movie, man, the first time I watched it, I just really enjoyed more like the aesthetic, and the performances are just a lot of fun. It has this cross between like total horror and like almost slapstick comedy at times. Yeah. And I absolutely adored it the first time, and then to go into these really cool abstract ideas with the lighthouse itself, connection with kind of his like the sexuality stuff he's dealing with, and then bringing in mythology with the mermaid and some hints towards some Greek mythology. I think you were telling me it's similar to a story with Prometheus, where it's like,
yes.
And I think I could be getting this mixed up with another Greek mythological character, but there's a character that is trying to get the answers from the gods, and he's not meant to. And I'm almost certain it's Prometheus, but I could be wrong.
I can't. Prometheus is the one who took the fire from the gods and took it down to Earth and gave it to man, and then he was punished for doing that.
Okay, I think that's Prometheus, and I think that after watching it the second time, I connected that myth a little bit more with the movie, because
with the lighthouse light and stuff, trying to get it from Willem Dafoe.
Because he says, like, he has lines where he's just like, you're hogging it all for yourself, like the answers, whatever it is. And essentially Dafoe's character is constantly saying, know your place. You've been here for a couple weeks. I've been here for 30 years. I tend to the lighthouse. And then there's this like, and you can, agree or disagree with how Dafoe is viewing the situation, as well as how Pattinson's viewing the situation. Because, I mean, I can empathize with Pattinson, where it's like, you're on this rock with a stranger. There's no human beings around you.
Who's your boss?
Like,
and he's your boss. You're not on equal footing on him.
Where he's basically saying, look, I don't care if you think that this is clean. I don't think this is clean. And that is what the hierarchy is.
Right.
And so I think this movie is kind of just, in a way, saying it's like, know your place. Yeah. And whether or not you agree with it, I don't think really matters, just because of like the situation that he's in. I kind of understand Dafoe going like, you're going to be here for 4 weeks. This is my station. I'm the boss. You just need to listen to me. He even, and then we have Pattinson's. I watched it with subtitles this time, by the way, because I was like, there were certain things that I was just not catching up on when I watched it the first time.
Yeah, and we should mention for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Manning a lighthouse in like 19th century New England, basically.
Yeah, and basically we have Pattinson slowly going mad, and then watching it the second time, I realized I think Dafoe's also.
They're both
mad.
going crazy.
It's just the first time I was more focused on Pattinson's kind of descent into madness, because it seemed like Dafoe had a more. It's like he understood what was going on a little more, but then we start to get really muddled where. It's like Dafoe is chasing him with an axe, and then literally a minute later, after he stops chasing him, he mentions that he was being chased with the axe. Yeah. So then you're just like, wait, am I fucking crazy? Are these guys crazy? And I think the whole film's trying to do that, and then at the same time, just kind of show the Prometheus story of a mortal trying to get the knowledge of the gods, and once he even accomplishes that. It's too much for him, and he's basically thrown to back to the normal land, where the humans are, and then is punished, we'll say. So yeah, I do think that I could even get more out of it as I watch it, because there's stuff that he correlates with, like he connects Robert's past with a boy that he may or may not have killed, and then took that
in
name.
Canada.
Right, yeah.
Chopping down trees and shit.
Yep. And the accents are fucking just unbelievable in this. Amazing.
Yeah, they're doing really
performances.
goofy Melville affectations, like Moby Dick kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
Yeah, it's great. And then I also love the horrifying... The mermaid is horrifying to me.
Yeah.
Like, she's beautiful. Whoever they found, the model is absolutely beautiful.
But you mean like the design
the
of...
design, because they
like
make
the
it very
scales
realistic,
and
then also the sound design for her scream.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it just gets me. It really chills
screechy,
me. That
sure.
scene where you just see her floating in the ocean. It's just her floating towards you, and Pattinson's just looking at it, and then she lets out that mermaid siren scream. It honestly gives me chills.
Yeah, that one. And for me, my favorite image is the one where it's naked Willem Dafoe using the lighthouse
for
beam
the
out of his
eyes?
eyes and like hitting him in the face, and he's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I actually found a painting that they basically like ripped it from. I think I might have shown it to you, but
oh yeah, that's gotta be it. Like, holy shit, is that like kind of a classic?
An old painting? Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so
like some of the images in it in particular, like the lens work, like what Robert Eggers' team with the production design and with the camera
they're trying to
lensing
capture
and
this
stuff.
like 18th century vibe, right?
Yeah, well, and they basically went back to 1920s like expressionist silent era films basically for their image making and stuff like that, and you can really tell that like the old film stock, the old lenses that they used, like incredibly beautiful stuff in the square framing that they have there.
So yeah, I think I fucking love this movie. It the second time I just felt like I got more from it, and I still feel like there's more to uncover. So it's one of those films I know I'm gonna find myself just rewatching and showing people. And the last thing I'd say is Pattinson's character. There's plenty of lines where he is talking about how he's never been able to stay on one post. You know, he's like, never found someone to get a shine to or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think that idea connects directly with the whole hierarchy thing again, whereas like I don't think Dafoe respects Pattinson's character, because he's like, you move from one place to the next, and
I've
then
been
you
here
come
forever,
here,
yeah.
and then you tell me that you deserve to see the light.
Yeah.
You know, you don't. You're new. You need to stay in a place and have. You need to commit to something.
But that bit when he finally touches the light.
Oh god! And then
like,
the distorted laugh and everything.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so fucking good. I honestly, I'm probably gonna 5-star this movie eventually. It's just kind of, I feel it in me.
Hell yeah! If you guys like the textures of like floorboards soggy with smelly bodily fluids,
and then like giant squids that you're not quite sure are coming from which direction.
the occasional homoerotic energy of
Yes.
two dudes stuck together, getting drunk together every night.
I love their relationship, with their love-hate relationship, where they're like just total brothers, and then at the same time they want to fucking just
They're
kill
also
each
in
other.
competition, and then also at one point they like try to kiss each other, and then they're like, no.
And then
no.
my favorite part is when they almost kiss each other, and then to counteract that act, they start physically fighting each other. It's like, well, we can't have sex, so I'm just gonna beat the shit out of you. And I just think that's so
Or the
funny.
one where they're yelling at each other at the top of their lungs, and then it's a hard cut to them slow dancing.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much of that. And then I love, like, it starts to get to this really aggressive, almost punk rock Sailor Jerry shit, where they're doing the work and they're just chugging rum to the point where most of it isn't even going in their mouth. They're just letting it all go into. It's so punk rock at a certain point. And God damn it, I love this film. I love this movie.
Yeah, this was pretty close to my list, and we did a bonus transmission on it too on the Patreon.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear even more about that,
Yes.
again, go over on the Patreon. But number one, now correct me if I'm wrong. I'm doing the math here.
Yeah. Think
Irishman?
The Irishman.
Irishman. All right. So
I
Jamie
don't
and
know
I
I don't know how much we have to elaborate on this one. We have an hour-long review on this bad boy.
yeah, if you guys
want to check it
like
out.
we're gonna try. I'm gonna start timing us right now. and I'm not going to let this go for
This is
longer than a
already,
certain
like,
amount of time.
2.5, 3 hours
Because when we did it on the Patreon, we were like, yeah, we're going to go for 20 minutes, and we went for an hour. So
Yeah.
I'm going to stop us at a certain point here talking about The Irishman. We're going to try and speed round it. But if you guys do want more talk
do that.
on The Irishman, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast, we did a full hour-long discussion. I don't think we missed anything on that.
No.
So we might miss
I
up
think
on
we
here just
went
because
through, like,
we
every
don't have
scene.
as much time. So Jamie and I are going to use both of our few minutes we got here, and we're going to...
I get like a 5-minute max.
We're going to try and summarize The Irishman, but it's the number one movie for me. It was like the super 5 of the year for me, and I was just emotionally devastated by this film. Basically, like the second I watched it the first time, when Jamie and I both saw it in the theater, we were lucky enough to watch it for 3.5 hours straight in a theatrical setting.
It was amazing.
And I just got to say, the way that this movie gets you into the headspace of Frank Sheeran, played by Robert De Niro, who eventually killed what was his closest friend, Jimmy Hoffa, played by Al Pacino, because basically his bosses told him to, including Joe Pesci, who's playing Russell Buffalino. And the way it gets you into the headspace of this guy who just lived through, and it traces 5 decades from the 1950s all the way until the early 2000s, of this guy who lived his entire life like it was work. That he went into the army, he got desensitized to killing, and he got he learned that following orders was, you know, how he could climb the ranks. And then he gets added into the mob, and he basically, all of his relationships with the people around him are transactional in the way that his boss tells him to do something, he does it, he gets rewarded with, you know, financial success. And, you know, with financial success, he'll find a family, he'll have a home, he'll have all of this stuff. So he has everything.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that it's directly connected to murder.
No, what's so scary about this film and the way Martin Scorsese directs it is he intentionally shoots it in a very non-stylish, very non-showy kind of style. The way that he told his editor and Thelma Schoonmaker and his cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto was that he wanted to make it the anti-Goodfellas, that he wanted something that was not super you got swept up in it. He wanted something that reflected Sheeran's character, that was super basic, that was to the point, that was workmanlike. So that's the feeling that you get, is watching a guy who is a total sociopath, who doesn't feel anything, go through these super important moments in his personal life and in like the political life of the 1950s all the way to the 2000s, and all of these situations happening like it doesn't mean very much. And what you're watching is a film of an old man filled with regret recall these memories, realizing their impact later in life. And not
like the scene with the nurse where it's just like, we don't even know who Jimmy Hoffa is. Yeah. And that was like his that's his life right there. Yeah. That's his legacy. And people don't know about it, they don't care.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like and he kind of he realizes it all at once too, which is pretty devastating. And
we talked about on the bonus transmission the way that Scorsese captures this, like the use of color. Like I was talking about how Prieto for the 50s films, he used I can't remember, Kodachrome, I think it was, and then in the 60s and 70s he used Ektachrome film of amateur photography, so like blues and greens versus like the reds and yellows of the Kodachrome.
Right.
And then by the time they hit 2000, they did this very muted, desaturated digital. So over the course of the film from the 1950s to the 2000s, the movie is literally drained of color and drained of life as Frank Sheeran's life just gets emptier and emptier and emptier. And it does it so subtly that like the character himself didn't realize it. He didn't realize that that's what was happening. And you're watching this and you're just sitting there in the point of view of a guy doing these terrible things like murdering people in these like very simple pans, and this thing where he's describing it where he's like, you know, I like to go to the washroom before I do a kill, just, you know, because I don't want to be uncomfortable, and like he's talking about fucking killing someone.
He's just talking about how you got to piss first, you know? You can't be uncomfortable
so
while you're shooting someone in the head.
And the way that it merges that with, and how Robert De Niro, who plays it very internal, very subtle, very like he doesn't quite know how to express himself. At one point Al Pacino's even like, you know, you're kind of quiet. I don't know what you're feeling sometimes. Whereas Al Pacino is so full of personality and life, and he's yelling, and he's such a presence in the film that the second he's not in the film, you really do feel like the film has lost something.
Yeah. It's true. Like they paint almost every if not even almost, I think every gangster character as completely stoic and boring.
Yeah.
With this time around, where we are used to more Casino, Goodfellas, whatever, but this time around they gave it to Jimmy Hoffa. They gave it to the politician.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, and again, the way that there's Robert De Niro's like daughter Peggy in the film, who very clearly sees Buffalino and sees her dad as people who put on this friendly facade of being like good father figures, but who are actually like these terrible people dealing out violence behind the scenes. In one scene, not even behind the scenes, where he just like
in front of her, basically just like almost kills a man.
She speaks up to him, and then he inflicts violence because of it, and then people wonder why she doesn't have many lines.
I love that.
That's
the last. It's like that's the last time she talked to him, basically.
Yeah, until the thing where she says, "Why?"
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, because she knows.
Yeah, she knows.
And that's a devastating moment, just because it's like because it's everything that we've seen before. Finally, Jenny gets to the point, or Peggy gets to the point where she just has to confront him. It's like there's at a certain point, because it's Jimmy. It's like so you're such a fucking monster that you killed the family friend, the one that also I am most connected with.
Yeah.
Like
when they're eating Sundays
thing.
together, and when like Peggy knows that Jimmy, like, he works for the community, he works for the workers, like he's respectable kind of figure.
I also think like Peggy, I don't know if Peggy necessarily thought this, but the way I saw it was like Jimmy was at least some little connection that they could have, where it's like, Robert De Niro's character is best friends with him. Mm-hmm. He loves Peggy. So there's something there that could at least be connected.
They both love Jimmy,
and then he kills the one last tiny connection that he had with Peggy.
Yeah.
And it's just like
leaves his life.
It just shows that that everything was just a job. Like there wasn't really a lot of emotion, even though there's hints of it, which I like. Like it seems like Robert De Niro holds Jimmy just a second longer before he's about to kill him in the car when they have a greeting hug. And so there's small little things where it's like maybe he has some emotion.
And even the jokes that they share, like the one where he calls the guy like a whopper or whatever.
Yeah.
And then and Robert De Niro's being like he's being like, dude, like clearly he's being like, why would you say that? But at the same time, like
but
he thinks it's really funny.
He laughs while he's like, come on, Jimmy. It's so good. Because he enjoys it so much, but he knows like what should be done and all that, but he lets himself go with Jimmy. I loved it. It's like the only time that he shows any like real human side to him is when he was with Jimmy.
Right, because he loves hanging out with Jimmy. Yeah. And then he's put into the hit against Jimmy, and then you watch him kill the only thing in his life that he basically loved.
Yeah.
Because his boss told him to. And the way that Scorsese films it, where he just goes through the motions, it's completely silent. It's completely bare. Like, there's no crazy camera moves. It's just Robert De Niro in the car, brings Al Pacino into the house, pops him in the head. Yep. And Al Pacino, up until the second he died, didn't think that Robert De Niro was even capable of that.
Where he looks at the empty house and doesn't think that that's the guy.
That the gun behind him is going to kill him.
It couldn't possibly be him.
Yeah, and he's like, come on, let's go.
That's the saddest part, man, for sure.
And then the final hour of the film, which I think is just maybe the best thing Scorsese's ever directed, which is just that slow decay and sink into the dirt, basically, where Robert De Niro, it's a 1 hour, or maybe not even an hour, it's like a 45-minute coda on the film, where all you get to experience is Frank Sheeran's body fail him. He's like falling over. He's got to get crutches. He's got to go into the nursing home.
Joe Pesci, watching him
in prison
and then also
with each other.
Realize he's learned nothing from the whole situation.
Yep.
Where it's like, this is where I wanted us to get to.
Yeah,
fuck them.
and you're sitting there going, this is like all of those brutal things that you did so that you guys could survive, because he chose them.
Yeah,
it's like, this is what you did it for.
In a cell.
Yeah, so that you could both just sit there and have your bread and grape juice.
Yeah,
and Joe Pesci's got like the fake teeth. He's got the little handshake. He can't even quite eat it.
Man.
And it's a plea that he and Frank were like actually friends and not just employer and employee. But he clearly never felt the same way about Pesci as he did about Pacino.
Right.
And same with the reverse. Like, Pesci never really actually treated... The first thing he does after he makes him kill Hoffa is make him do another hit, which is a bad hit against the the one guy who didn't even have to be killed. It was just an internal miscommunication that resulted in that guy's death, and Frank Sheeran had to be the one to do it. So again, just that really scary meaninglessness and that lack of soul to it, and very intentional, is just really scary to watch. And then, you know, Robert De Niro having to go and buy his own coffin because none of his family even talks to him.
Great scene by Action Bronson as well.
Yeah.
Shout out to Bronson, because that
This is like the
so,
Cadillac.
the Cadillac of coffins, man. You see anything you like? Oh,
Yeah.
great scene. Yeah.
And again, then just, you know, like the final scene of the film, which we talked about on the bonus transmission, but where you just get that shot of Robert De Niro completely alone in the hospital being like, it's Christmas.
And Scorsese's fake out. Like the one where it's like, here's the last shot. Nope, we're going to do one more close up of him. Maybe something will be, maybe an epiphany will happen. Nothing. Shot back. He's alone in the room. Cut to black.
Where
And
he
it's
tells
just-
him to leave the door ajar, which I realized on the second watch was the same way that Jimmy slept. So
Yeah.
Jimmy Hoffa, when he sleeps for the first night with Al Pacino, Robert De Niro in the same hotel room, Jimmy always sleeps with the door ajar, cracked open, and you can actually, on rewatches, you can see the shot of Robert De Niro looking at him through the crack in the door, and being like, "I'm here to protect him." So at the end of his life, when no one's talking to him, he's telling the priest to keep the door ajar because he's still thinking about Jimmy at the end of his life, whether he feels sorry or whether he really understands the gravity of what he's done. Like, subconsciously, it's still there, and it's just soul crushing. It's so
it's a devastating gangster movie.
it's
honestly.
so completely sad. Like there really is like a haunting like grief and guilt overall to the film.
It's a very mature movie.
Yeah. So I just felt that it's really the way that it captures that emptiness and really disturbingly renders the idea of a guy who doesn't feel things correctly is just like really, really like beautiful but incredibly sad to watch. So it had to be the number one. I watched this movie like
too.
3 or 4 times this year, and it's 3.5 hours long.
Yeah, so you know it's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the number one film of 2019 genre-wise.
The Irishman.
We did it. And
We
again,
did it.
I feel
Big
like
old episode.
I feel like that still wasn't enough talk about The Irishman.
Yeah,
but if you want more,
yeah.
patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. It was the last bonus transmission we did in December there. We went for an hour and we
honestly,
went into
like,
more detail.
Like half these movies we have kind of more full reviews on, so if you guys are interested,
Yeah, if any of the titles
Patreon.
we talked about today you want to hear more about, there's likely a bonus transmission
likely,
where we
yeah.
talked for
Most
like,
of
between 15 minutes to half an hour on each one kind of deal.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear any of those, again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. But that will wrap it up for this bonus transmission for you guys this week. We are going to be back in... Wait, this isn't a bonus transmission. What am I talking about? That was the end of the
free
year
one.
episode, but we are now going to be resuming regular scheduled programming for the rest of 2020.
Oh, baby.
So, happy 2 years of Sleazoids.
Yeah.
We are going to be jumping in next week with the bonus episode for the Patreon listeners. And that bonus episode is going to be, last week we did They Live and Repo Man, which was their voted episode for episode number 100.
Right.
So, for episode 102... next week, we decided we were going to do their second highest voted double feature,
That's
which was a
awesome.
John Woo double feature
So
of
good.
The Killer from 1989 and Hardboiled from 1992. So that's what you can expect in 1 week's time. Again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast for that episode. It's exclusively over there. But in 2 weeks' time, we are going to be back with a special guest, and we are going to be talking about Bayham.
Yes.
There is a new Bad Boys movie coming out called Bad Boys for Life, I think. So
Nice.
we are going to be talking about the original Bad Boys, and then we are also going to be talking about Bad Boys 2. And I have brought on a guest who really, really loves Bad Boys 2 and is going to make the argument that it's like a vulgar-oturous masterpiece. So
I think I might like it more this time around. 'Cause I
I'm
watched
definitely
them,
excited to rewatch it.
Yeah, I watched them like a couple years ago when we were kind of beginning all this stuff. And I feel like the sleaze
You've
is
gotten
gonna
more trash.
is gonna capture
yeah.
me a little more this time.
That's true. I mean, if you liked Six Underground, from my memory, Bad Boys 2 is just as crazy. But
Yeah,
like,
I know that I at least 3 Bad Boys
but
2.
more practical and less plastic than
Yeah.
what Six Underground kind of looks like.
For sure.
So
They at least try to be empathetic to the human body a little bit.
well, except for when they're running over those corpses.
No, but those are dead people, so it's totally fine.
It's fine.
I'm sure that's what Michael Bay's like connect. He probably made that excuse. I'm sure where he's like, yeah, but they're dead.
Totally
so it's
fine.
not like it's not disrespectful at all.
Totally fine.
God, Bay.
All right. Well, that will wrap it up.
Insane,
We're gonna
man.
leave because this was a super long episode.
Yeah, holy
I'm,
shit.
I'm getting drowsy.
Yeah, I'm tired.
We are gonna something episodes in the future.
Yeah,
that was
they're
what
coming.
that's what I was just saying.
Plenty of stuff's coming your way, folks.
Yep. Yeah. Something or other. Keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, y'all. Enjoy that 3 hours.